ichipfira ichipinda mamukuvisi, and then there's another pipe, that is, next to it, being said Gutizo is the latest one, but already you can begin to see what is the latest one yacho yoyo, yeah, condition yacho yairi haichaita. Saka you're finding kuti at the end of the day hapana maintenance iri kuitwa, and without maintaining this infrastructure we'll get to where we are today, and it is quite sad, really it is quite sad. But anyway, rega tiende kuna two boy muri sei?
Yes, and how are you?
I am good.
Good. Nandoseka pamati birthday rashira. Rashira was right. Kunoku tatobara kamwe kashira kadiki ndikatoya nhasi.
Inga magorogoro.
Tuano tinenge tinofurirana mabirthday acho zuva rimwe chete.
Inga magorogoro.
Magorogoro. Aiwa.
Birthday ngabomana.
Chikaita times 2. Let's go back to our topic. Because sometimes mukoma takabarwa mufakosa. How are you, homeboy kumfakosa? Nzimbe dzaitengeswa kwamazai kuya wakamodya nzimbe inenge yaiswa manyowa emadhodhi here. Manakira dzaita waziziya here nzimbe dzekwamazai idzedzo. Hauzomboziva kuti nzimbe yabuda mudhodhi inenge ichitapira zvakaipa. Ndo zvazviri taitombokwenda kwamazai kune kumafambs kwanzi kwamazai kwekwe nemavheji acho shizha racho raitoita kunge nzeve dzenzou richitapira zvakaipa.
Zvakwana chede
but tichida kungotacha kuproject zvezimbabwe zimbabwe ndakutotadza kuitsanangura sei. Last week pandaidzegedza ndimbotaura paya ndakatobata phone kuyanga yabva kumusha. Munhu akatengesewa mukati kapfuku here kumaheuti kutengeswa mumacontainer so. Cousin yangu iyonzi akabva kuno kunyati akaenda kumusha akatenga akaonzi akanorwara inoya zvekuti angomwa kapfuku kuti kapfuku kakato expire kudhara. Kandi zvezimbabwe sometimes hazvichanzwisisika. But I like what my brothers said. Kune national projects, you cannot give them to the council to take over. So kona central government yakupa national project kuna mapfumi mari acho anoiwana kupi? Ndopano pakanganiswa nehurumende yeZANU-PF, nokuti mapfumi haana kana mari yekwakadhamuya haana kana. And just to make it things simple, mapfuma kune 150,000 illegal structures. So I'm sorry. Normal sometimes unaenda kutoilet twice kunoseta number 2. So kana paine 150,000 illegal structures. Zimbabwe dzimwe kunochigara vanhu 8 ngarikoti vanhu 5 times 150,000. Anatitus ndi makaenda somo. What a number yachona multiply by 2 munhu ari normal anonoseta number 2. Saka tsvina yacho kuenda kupi iyoyo? And for how many years? Ndopatave right now. Ende kune mukuvisi kuya ikungonowira kumukuvisi kuya. Omwana mukwana munhu wakuita tsvina inouraya kaya nechipembere. Tichiri vanhu here maZimbabweans? Hazvichanzwisika tichiri vanhu here. Yakuzi ndautora chaizvo mukwasha. Aiwa tiri kumbodye chii? Kuti vanhu vakuita tsvina inouraya chipembere ukumbodya chii? Guys, ndingangoseka zvetichange zvichikuita ngano chiita patya but asituka pakaoma. Haana plani munhu guys. Akangoda power chete but plan haana. Haana plan kana one. Right now takutona kana even vana varume ana baba vakutambira one love rechingwa. Ndopatasvitswa maZimbabweans. Ende zvinongona kuti class system yacho neri yakunyatsa kuoneka. Vanopiwa motikari hatimboona vachitamba isu. But vanopiwa mabhaketi maybe vanopiwa mabhaketi echingwa. Jesus. But solution nkwasha ingangoiri radical. Ende inga isingafadzi vanhu vakawanda but ndo solution ingangoti dai tadzokera ikoko. Vakapinda muHarare vasina noti nkwasha iyo hiye haungaende haungangono kupinda muLondon usina pekugara. You'll be kicked out. Haungangoenda any city ungopinda usina pekugara, you'll be kicked out. So vakapinda muHarare. Why only Harare? Kana munhu uchibva unobva kuBulawayo, unobva kuMasvingo, unobva kuChivi, unobva kupi. You've got no shelter to go to Harare. Why are you going to Harare for then? So adanga mapfumo he has to start a household ega ega kana brand kumfa kwose kwatakabarirwa kunogara mukoma wangu. Kana paine household kuti kugara mwana asire ipapo, he has to go out. Ngadzokere kumusha. Kana uchipinda muHarare usire muHarare, you have to pay. Imi mama driver muchipinda muLondon mamubhadhara here.
Matogets nobhadhara.
Uchipinda muHarare usire muHarare, you have to pay. Haungagari muHarare iwewe uda kunosquata. Dzokera kwaChivi. Pinda muHarare sano. Vanhu vaiti kana achitsvagirwa basa kuHarare aitsvagwa basa ari kumusha. Kunzi basa rawanikwa muzukuru shuya mangwana utoko uchinopinda kubasa. Ende sekuru wako pamadays futi he has to kick you out waunotsvaga pako pekugara. But kwasvika vamwana vekuti vanonorara pamusika paya paya, vamwe vanonorara mutauni, vamwe vanonosquata mudzimba imomo. 12, 15 vanhu vagara mudzimba 1. People they have to go where they belong.
Right.
Not kuno vanobhadhira marets kubhadhira vamwe vanhu vasiri havasi kubhadhira marets but vakuda kushandisa mafacilities acho nayo. So tingararame chirudzi ino vanhu vakadaro. Inyaya dzemacorporation ka zvekupanana zvemavhotsi. Kuti vakapa zvemacorporation apa mavhotsi obva awanda. But pavanovhotera vanhu vacho obva vasiya. So vanhu ngavadzokere musha kwavo. Kana muHarare mukasara mablanda aya ndo vakanga vaine munyati wekutsvaga imba muHarare ngavasara ariyo imomo nokuti ndo vakatenga dzimba muHarare. Vasina dzimba much simple problem inoita shoma. Thank you but zvave kudya guys, idyawo chikafu chakareruka mukapedza modyawo mayogati modyawo something nokuti kana vakuita tsvina unouraya nzoka. Vaipa.
Alright. Chene munotochera chira. Right. Regai fambire mberi.
Uncle, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I think Uncle Atsikatam because I was struggling to hear you.
Come on, guys.
Okay, now
you're clear now. Yeah, you went out for like 30 seconds or so, but you're back now.
I need it. Right. Okay. There are 6 things that come through.
Yeah, no, thanks, Uncle. So I wanted to sort of like reinforce what Zeti said. I slightly disagree with him, Kuti. The person responsible for the mess that we're in at the moment is the city of Harare. And the city of Harare is a utility provider, meaning Kuti, they give water to the residents of Harare. They are the custodians of what is called the water safety plan. So the water safety plan is what Zetu mentioned to say, kana mvura iri patep, you look at the entire chain kuti mvura iyi yabva kupi, yafamba mapipes akachena here, haina here chingange chai contaminator from the point that it was treated. And equally so in the source water, meaning the dam, you also want to go back kuti hapana here chimwe chinhu chingange chichicontaminata mvura iyi, chinhu ichocho chatisingateste. As an example, the mayor said tinoshandisa the World Health Organization standard to test the water, but that standard has a certain number of parameters that you test against. So as an example, in the event cyanide is not part of those parameters because the World Health Organization assumes kuti mumvura iri mudam you are never going to have cyanide. So as a city of Harare, they should guard against what's happening in Lake Chivero. They should understand all the activities happening around Lake Chivero that can influence stormwater kupinda mune that lake, to make sure that there is no contaminant that's going in there that they won't be aware of, which can then compromise people's health. Now, that said, I'm going to go to like the wastewater, meaning the water that you flush down the toilet. So that water has remnants of the medication that you take. If you're on chronic medication like antiretroviral drugs, you're going to get some residue of those antiretroviral drugs going into the wastewater. You're going to get the normal human waste. You're going to get remnants of paracetamol, caffeine that go into that water. And in addition to that, you're going to get residue of what are called endocrine disruptors. Now, these endocrine disruptors are, as an example, if your body produces insulin, such that it influences the body's response to sugars and so forth. When that insulin is not needed anymore, it is broken down and secreted outside the body as waste. Meaning, you also get that in your wastewater. Now, all of those things, in addition to industrial effluent, they are then combined and they go into Lake Chivero. Once they go into Lake Chivero, they are just recycled back to our water treatment plants. And our water treatment plants, the current ones that we have, which is Morton Jeffrey, it is not designed to take out these contaminants, which are synthetic in nature, and a lot of them which are carcinogenic. And at this point, I'm going to stop and say, that is why I have advised everyone that I know that you should never drink tap water in Harare because of this very nature. So all those synthetic contaminants, known and unknown, that end up in Lake Chivero are not treated. Now, when the mayor then goes on to say, we use the WHO standard to test for the water and it is safe. Now, the WHO standards are two. There is one that assumes this is a dam which is in a pristine environment and which does not receive wastewater. So it asks you to test a certain number of parameters. Kuti, this water is suitable for drinking. Then the World Health Organization goes a step further and then says, if your water is contaminated by industrial and domestic effluent, then you use this more robust testing regime to determine if your water is conducive for human consumption. Now, that list, the city of Harare has no ability to test for it. Neither does any other municipality in Africa, because the only labs that can test for these additional parameters of source waters which are contaminated with synthetic organics are in Europe and in China and the United States. Now, I'll give you an example. To test for the entire variation of these parameters, which include the hormones, which include antiretroviral drugs, which include TB, just testing one sample and getting a full array of those results costs $150,000 just for one sample. So when the city of Harare now comes and says, we are testing this water and it complies, they are using the standard which is not applicable for their source water because their source water is contaminated by domestic and industrial effluent. So they need to use the secondary standard, which they do not have an ability to test for. And that is where the problem is. Now, to address all of these challenges, number one, if the city of Harare followed their water safety plan, which says, if we are taking water from Lake Chivero, has it been contaminated with any domestic or industrial effluent? The answer is simply yes. Then they go on to the next step. Then is the standard that we are using applicable? Then the answer becomes obvious, no. And that is where the city of Harare is now failing. Now, if they can't test for it and they want to move away from the secondary, more robust testing regime, it means that they now need to treat all of the effluent that ends up in Lake Chivero, and they need to guard the catchment around Lake Chivero to ensure that you don't get contaminants, which then become problematic and cancer-causing in taps. Now, after the treatment, which is superficial and obviously not adequate, you then have the piping that you have seen. And I think Uncle Matala mukati pane pipes andakaona a wastewater. Aitora samvura chisamvura muna mukuvisi. Right. Why would you think the ones that convey the treated water to your houses are not in the same condition? Because they were installed at the exact same time. Now, all of that leaching and that corrosion of the pipes that carry that treated water to Morton Jeffrey, let's assume for 1 minute that they treat the water to the right standard, which they don't. Now, all of that pipe work that is now bringing that water back to your house is in the exact same condition, meaning those metals are leaching into the water, and by the time it gets to your house, it is not in the condition that it was, when it was treated at the plant. So all of that accounts to a situation where Hararians should stay away from the treated water that is coming out of their taps. Because if they continue drinking it and eating the fish, they're exposing themselves to high levels of cancer, which it's obvious because a lot of these chemical parameters, are known to be carcinogenic in nature. So I think, I'll stop it at that point and hand over back the mic.
Thank you very much, Mkoma, for that informative contribution. Narotumirwa message handizwa ndivewo presentation here man. Motozomirira Mkoma kana tinge tapedza mozoita playback, mokwanisa kuzoita isolate pataurwa naMkoma. Motora presentation yacho nhingi yavapa. I think kunesu manovice vasingatomu understanda kuti izvo zvikufamba sei. Aiwa, thank you very much, Mkoma Sixpence. I really appreciate what you have said. Right. Can I kindly ask you again on that aspect, your solution? How then does building another facility? Does building another facility help? Because it is obvious, Kuti, it is now a poison, Charles. And for the treatments that you're talking about, Kuti Aitwe is going to be costing, more money, which, with our Zimbabwean, standards in terms of kuchoboka, you'd see Kutizo, atina mari. But will building another water body, another source, be a permanent solution to the current issue that we are experiencing in neglect?
Yeah, so ideally, Uncle, you don't want to abstract drinking water from a dam that you discharge the wastewater. And, for obvious reasons, because it means you're discharging, all of the toxic pollutants that you consume, like my cleaning chemicals, my herbicides. Because if you look at it this way, wastewater in about 60% of what you flush and and what comes from industry. Then 40% is stormwater runoff. Meaning kuti as you walk in Harare on a rainy day, it's going to end up in the wastewater. Now, pane ma oil, ma grease, pane everything, ma chemicals anokwesheswa mutara, like vanhu vanosuka vachikanda panze. Now, all of that is going to end up in Lake Chivero. Now, when you design a water treatment plant, you then say, what is in this water? And what do I want to take out to make it compliant for drinking? Now, it means, based on that background, it means you are best off treating mvura yaunoziva zviri mairi. and not treating mvura yausingazive kuti yakukura chii. Nekuti you might treat one parameter and not treat against another parameter yakukura kuhighfields yausingazive. So that is why going to a pristine environment which has limited chemicals is always a better thing. And then you separate where you discharge your effluents and where you take your drinking water. Now, what's happening with Lake Chivero is a case of, two things. One, an ecological disaster, meaning kuti all the nutrients, nitrates, phosphates, Lake Chivero, it's essentially fertilizer. And what they do when they go into Lake Chivero, they then fertilize algae, green here. So then it proliferates. It gets to a point where it bursts because you release the cyanobacteria. That cyanobacteria is toxic even to human beings, right?
So this is the one that is killing now the animals.
That is now what is killing the animals. So what happens is because of the vastness of the lake, in areas where it's highly concentrated, algae, and that is where it's more concentrated as opposed to the other side of the lake and so forth. So and the like. So the ideal thing would be to move away from that catchment which you don't have control over to a catchment which is more pristine and you have control over what ends up in that catchment. Because like I said, if I give you a glass of water which has things that you don't know of, it becomes difficult for you to treat, because treating is a negative feedback system whereby I need to know what I am removing from the water. Now, if you don't know what you're removing from the water, you don't know what to treat in the water. And the only way to realize what is kupa mvura and it's some boom. And that is not the way of doing it.
That is what I do.
So,
that is not ideal.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, I think I think Lake Chivero is as you say, it's a poison chalice. I think people should move away from it. But as an interim solution, because people are still relying from it, you now need to do an extensive analysis of all the contaminants that are in Lake Chivero, and then make the current water treatment more robust to ensure that as you come up with a more permanent solution, the water that is going to the residents is fit for purpose. So as a starting point is to agree with the standard that you are using is not adequate, because it is a standard that is more suitable for pristine environments. So you need to move to the more robust standard, test for it, and then bolster the treatment steps to ensure that while you do whatever you do, residents are getting good water which does not expose them to cancer.
Right. Thank you very much. Appreciate. Yeah, bakaiba. Mkoma tongesai makasimba ere.
Mkoma jeru makadiko. Happy Christmas.
Yeah, happy. Oh, matungoita ina.
Atitomiri noti takatomirira ma Christmas present acho makakanda ukuro kuya.
Aiwa, tinokanda.
Yeah. Thanks for the space, Mkoma jeru. Mkoma vari kutaura chokwadi apa pati the water nagekire situation iri kudzokera kumadhamu edu. But inini ndinemuono kuti zviri kutaurwa nevanhu kuti Harare population yakurisa kana zvaitika ichokwadi. In a normal situation, tingadei tichitochema kuti mvura yashoma muHarare, kwete kuti mvura iri contaminated kana takuti population yawandisa. But chiripo ndechokuti tikada kuanalyze nyaya yekuti yasvika sei apa, we go back to our politics. Harare City Council inopuwa mvura kana inotora mvura muma national reservoirs. Once va extract mvura iyoyo, they own it. Yava yeHarare City Council. Harare City Council kanchiti council handisi kubvira hangu vana mapfume vega, handisi kutarisa politics. Ndikutarisa the entire council. Kune ma-professionals, ma-engineers. Director of Housing Community Service is somebody anotozikanwa kuti muna akadzidza. Vane ma-experts anofanira kunge achivaudza kuti mvura yatatora kudhamu kuya yakamira sei pautsanana hwevanhu. Nemvura yatichapampa throughout Harare ichasvika kuvanhu ine utsanana hwakadii. Nemvura ichabva kuvanhu netsvina iyaya inobva yakamira yakadai ichinokolektwa papi isati yadzokera kana vachiidzosera along the water bodies. Kunyangwe affluent yacho iri kudzokera uku iri kumbotritiwayo here? Is there any biodegradation yapromotwa kana kuneutralize some of the machemicals anenge achida kuneutralize? Ndo patinoona kuti panoleka ipapo. Then we come to politics yedu yokuti wakomana, this is a situation yekuti vanhu vararame. Haungati kuti kune vamwe vanoti ivo vanongotora mvura voendesa uko, kozoya vamwe vanozoblemiwa kana zvinhu zvinenge zvaitika kuti paipa pano neupenyu hwevanhu mukati. But mabodies anofanira kunge achidyidzana. For example, 144 million mamuchitaura yakapuwa Harare City Council yemvura yakato-underwritewa nehurumende. I don't know kuti Harare City Council yakazopfuma yapapi, but ndakatonzwa pakuti pakunzi pakanetsa kuti haina kuzoshandiswa yese rinoti pange pasingachabhadharwi chikwereti chacho. But kushanda kwacho kuvese kuti iyo hurumende inotarisawo here kuinspector through ima kuti affluent iri kudzokera along the mafeeder lines awa, is it safe for the environment? Ivo vanhu vokuharare vacleanawo here? Because really we cannot apportion government mumvura iri kupampwa neHarare City Council to its residents, because the residents pay for it, they are buying. Saka now is the owners here Harare City Council to give the residents clean water. So pane two basic things ziri kuleka. Kana chiti Harare yatora mvura mulake Chiwero, yatora mvura yakaita sei? It's raw water. Ibasa reHarare to clean it. Kana Harare yakudzosera mvura, iri kudzosera mvura yakaita sei waste yacho iyoyo? It is their job to make sure that they actually process that waste. Endo panouya hurumende yotisa kuti process yacho yaitwa zvakanaka here? Is it not going to cause any environmental danger? But nokuda kwomusindo wanga uripo papolitics dzedu, kana kuti uriko, to say the truth, the waste is still going to come. And tikutotanga kuzviona iko zvino tichairidza mhere, tichadyana, kukamana chaiko, just because of this politics. Harare haina kuvakwa nhasi, yaimbonzi Salisbury. Zvinhu zvazvingaitiki izvo. Kwane vanhu vane ma-responsibilities, and those responsibilities either are not being executed. Total blame politics. Hatinga blame kusadzidza muZimbabwe nhasi kunzi ninge hana kudzidza. No. It is the type of politics yatiri involved in, yatisvitsa apa. Kana vachiiti toxicity, ndiyo product yacho iyoyi. Saka kukoma mashondo ngatizive kuti mvura taitora kuChiwero, taishandisa, taidzosera kuChiwero yakaita sei, and ngakuve necertification yekuti mvura yadzoserwa nemvura yatorwa izikanwe kuti iri clean sei. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ndrotenda Mkoma. Thank you very much, for that. I appreciate your contribution. Yeah, it is quite, important. Kuti, like pamataura paya kuti, ndapotaura inini nenyaya yesupply chain kuti yacho inofamba sei. Mukaona pakuita a break for whatever reasons, it means kuti izvo things are no longer working properly within that ecosystem. Saka, for the supply of a vital resource like water, there has to be concerted effort, and every effort must be put in place to make sure kuti whatever it is that happens when it comes to service delivery, it is not impacted by anything in terms of politics or whatever, but there has to be an agency, a collaboration that ensures that water is delivered from the source to the household in a condition inenge yakanaka, in a condition yekuti mvura iyoyo is safe for people, to drink. And it is quite, important that, we begin to be seeing things from that perspective as a nation. We begin to be looking at things zviri kuitika mukati menyika yedu yeZimbabwe from that perspective yekuti we are looking at the greater good. We are looking at what this thing contributes to the livelihood of people. Because the moment that we begin to be separating each other and segregating each other along whatever lines, that we try to employ and we try to bring into some of the conversations, that we have, then the only thing, that we are doing to ourselves is a disservice. And the only thing that we are doing to ourselves is a situation here, Kuti, there's going to be could deprive of what people really need to survive. And there has to be a point whereby, we get that, sorted and we get that right. Thank you very much, for that. I do appreciate. Engineer Farmer, how are you? Please take the mic.
Thank you, Angozit. Greetings, everyone on the platform. Interesting discussion that we are having here. I truly appreciate. I don't want to add on top of what the previous contributors have raised, including Sixpence, a very good presentation of our situation. But I want to talk about the other side of the story that we are not looking at. You see, water reticulation is a business, okay? It requires customers that pay, and a supplier anokwanisa collect the bills. That's not happening in the city of Harare.
Right.
In effect, makatobobuda achitaura iye achitaura kuti collection rate yavo was as far less than 50%. And to add on top of that, if we remember well from some other spaces that I attended, city of Harare haina a billing system. Meno kuti vanobhila sei vasina a billing software. I think they've tried to appoint a consultant to develop a billing system for them at a very exorbitant price of $300 million for something that would have been done much, much less. So what does this mean? If the city of Harare cannot collect the rates and water bills from the people or the residents of the city of Harare, it simply means they cannot then be able to repair and maintain the water infrastructure. They can't also treat the water from Chivero, Harava, and Seke dams adequately, so that when it goes back to the city of Harare, inenge of acceptable standards, acceptable water standards. So, ipapo business side of the story it's our major issue. Chechipiri, reticulation system inoshanda neinonzi cross subsidy, whereby the rich customers, they pay rates are higher so that they can then also subsidize vasinachi vasinamari. So in a normal city, the rich customers would be your industry, your businesses, and those who are staying to the north of Samora Machel. Now, the issue now iri muHarare ndeyekuti maindustry edu mazhinji are not performing well, mamwe akatovhara. So the equation resubsidy manje harisina kumira zvakanaka. Meaning now, over and above the issue yatataura yekuti hatisi collecta rates, hatisi collecta bills emvura, taane an imbalanced subsidy system, further worsening the situation for the city of Harare. Now, the other issue ndeyekuti the city of Harare yatora mvura muchivero yainda mudzimba yashandiswa, mvura iyoyo inodzoka zvakare as sewage. Tine wastewater treatment systems ari muHarare. Because of the issue yokuti they are not being run as a business, and the rest cannot sustain their operations, maintenance, upgrades. chinozosara chichiitika ndechekuti mvura inozobuda muwaste water treatment plant ikoko yakuidzokera futi kuchivero ikoko inenge iri of the worst quality. Asi pala handifuni kuti kune treatment iri kuitika. From my experience hangu zvingotenderera ndichiona in this region in Southern Africa, very few countries can actually afford to treat water adequately. South Africa, as it is, and in experience now, is struggling with treatment of wastewater. Now, a rich country like South Africa, if it's struggling to adequately treat its wastewater, what more of our country, Zimbabwe, which we know is going through the throes of economic hardships. So we are in a fine mess. The sewer irikupinda treatment irikupinda muswero, it's not treated at all. Inongori pipe irikubva musewage mako, maona mavideo mamustaura irikubva mutoilet yopinda mudhamu. Then treat futi kubva mudhamu tichidzosa muHarare. The same, we are not adequately treating that. Morton Jeffrey haina zvairi kuita, manzwa zvataurwa namukoma 6 pence. Then it's the same like that. So what is the solution for our city of Harare? And I want to say, before I go to my solution, I want to identify the key players who are to blame. Number one, government of Zimbabwe, or government of Rhodesia at the time, yakavaka zveshuwa chivero in the wrong position because it's downstream of Harare and Chitungwiza. That have been said, we should not have allowed, this is now government of Zimbabwe, the situation yekuti tinosvika at this stage yekuti our wastewater inongopinda muswero without being treated properly. If the sewage was being treated properly, that is not this ecological disaster atinayo kuti kuzasongo. City of Harare as well is the polluter of Chivero and is the abstractor of clear water from Chivero again. So ngavanyanyisanyanyotema zvavo because ichi vari kuzviitira ndio vari kuita problem yekuti havatreat sewage yavo, ndio again who cannot treat their water adequately. Then kune ma-government departments akaita sana EMA. If someone is discharging wastewater into a natural water body, that wastewater should have passed certain standards. In other countries, I think green drop standards. I'm not so sure in Zimbabwe if we adopted those green drop standards. Before you discharge water into a natural water body, how far to discharge wastewater is retreated. That's not happening in obviously in Harare. As you can see, our wastewater treatment plants are kaora and our pipes are just rotten like that. So EMA, Zinwa to a certain extent, because Zinwa zvayo blame because Zinwa is provided the lake which is Chivero. It is also building Kunji Dam through the ministry. So I wouldn't blame Zinwa a lot. EMA, City of Harare, and to an extent the government of Zimbabwe are the ones that really need to wake up and come up with a solution. So what is the solution? First of all, we need a policy, sort of a policy alignment. Right now, hatizivi kuti mvura yedu inofanira kutreatwa, yatreatwa and soil yatreatwa. Who funds that? Are we going to say it's the citizens who are going to, the residents of Harare are going to fund that? If they're going to fund that, then the rates and taxes that they pay to the city of Harare should be cost reflective. You can't charge them bills or rates that at the end of the day leave a gap between the cost of treating water in the city of Harare and the amount that they've paid. If that gap is there, then someone should pay for it. So if the government says, city of Harare, you can't raise your rates to a certain level or above a certain level, if there's a difference between the cost of treating water and the rest that the city of Harare can bill, then the government should come in and then subsidize. You see, that's not happening in Zimbabwe. So the business case for water treatment, for wastewater treatment is already gone. Once we don't have a functional business, business of water supply and wastewater treatment in Harare, then zvatirikuita izvi zvinoramba zvichingoitika because hapana mari. Ndosaka muchiona mapaipi asingakwanisi kureplacwa, mapaipi achingodhubuka, mvura isina machemicals. Remember, city of Harare requires 11 water treatment chemicals kuti mvura ichene. And I say mvura ichene in quotes because mvura yabuda muchivero inoramba ichingonhuhwa, inoramba ichingori nema those things vataurwa na6pence earlier on, ma-impurities iwayo. So before we even want to demand new pipes, new dams, new what, the business case of water supply needs to be rectified. Can I have a sustainable? Then we move from there and we are able now to start to say, okay, Mariavapo, pipe, Mariavapo, we are now upgrading Moton Jeffrey, Mariavapo Taku, Taku to upgrade when I fail wastewater treatment plants, etc. etc. So this is my side of the story. We as Zimbabweans, then we don't care about the business side. We don't care where the money is coming from. So the thinking needs to have a paradigm shift to an extent. So before we demand something, if we can't afford water treatment, water reticulation, then guys, let's come to that stage and say, the citizens or the residents cannot afford water. Then we actually take this deficit to the fiscus. Out of the taxes, Zimbabwe, part of it needs to go to pay or to subsidize city councils. So I think that's where we are actually having a problem there, the business side of water treatment. Thanks, Uncle Gerard.
Right. Thank you very much for introducing that into the conversation. I think we are going to have people that will speak, to that as well, which is quite important because we need to have a world view on this, aspect so that we see where the problems are and where the solutions, can come from. I was looking at, at IMA and, they're actually, stating some of the issues that we have with our water pollution in Zimbabwe, the activities that are causing that, like agriculture activities, including excess nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. We're talking about sewage and wastewater, oil pollution, radioactive substances. Yeah, so I mean, today, we are looking, into sewage and water, but the conversation so far has actually brought out that in addition, to this, there are other contaminants that end up in this Lake Chibero, and because of our inability to contain the water as it makes its way to Lake Chibero, you're going to find that treating that water is going to be a costly venture. Right. I see Dawn, you haven't spoken. So can I go to Dawn and then I'll come to you, Sixpence and Two Boy. And then the rest of the guys, who are on the panel want, to make a contribution. But Dawn, for now, he hasn't spoken. Please, take the mic.
All right. Thanks, Uncle Jed. It's been a while since I spoke here by my platform.
Oh, thank you very much for coming back.
Yes. Ndango now, this conversation, Yamurukuita, and I happen to be involved in water resources engineering. So let me just share my 2 cents and maybe talk on Ubatsirikana as a country. Nyaya it's because water is naturally it's not hydrological cycle kana kuti water resource cycle, because mvura yatinomwa ndo mvura yatinosvibisa futi, just like what happens naturally kuti mvura inonaya haisi kungonyuka kubva makore. It's that cycle yekuti yamboya pano pasi evaporate and it goes up again. That cycle, that hydrological cycle. So my first point is I think it's actually an advantage yekuti Lake Chivero are downstream of Harare, because it makes us think kuti kana mvura yatiri kunwa isusu ichiri kubva kulake iri downstream, dai tantiri kutora mvura upstream, we wouldn't care much about Lake Chivero, because kana zvatenda downstream hatisina basa. Vanhu vaizoita noise, vanhu vari kunana Darwindale, because mvura yemulake Chivero ichapesera yakuna Darwindale yozoenda futi muna Zambezi. Ndo vanhu vari kumamisha vatingadai takunzwa vachiti nzizi dzedu dzane tsvina. But the good thing now is Lake Chivero ndo source yedu yemvura yekumwa. So if there's a problem there, it makes Harare citizens know that something is wrong. That's the first point. And without it raise it's actually strategic. Vakavaka Harare vakaziva kuti dam redu source tikaisa upstream. Vanhu vemuHarare vachasvibisa mvura ongosiya zvichienda. So now we are having this conversation because our source of drinking water is polluted. Now, and more. So that's actually one point. And I also want to look at the business side of things, Kuti. Now, because water is a cycle, na engineer na mkoma sixpence as well. Kuti, we've got a cycle ye mvura kumwa wastewater ne potable water mvura kumwa. Now, Harare City Council pa point yavava manje pakunetsa because the infrastructure is so bad. In terms yekuti iko zvinonzi vakatrita mvura kuMorton Jeffrey, by the time it gets to the consumer, it's low quality, it's poor quality water, right? Because infrastructure yavo pakati apa ma networks avo anetsvina. One a good example is mvura painoenda paipai. Mapaipai anosara sort of kana mvura ichifamba constantly mumapipes. Amuite tsvina stereki mvura yoyo, but painomboenda pane tunhu tunosara bacteria imwe inosara yakaomera mapipes iyaya. Ndo yekuti mvura painozodzoka inenge yakukukura tsvina yese iri mumapipes. So now to say a consumer should pay for that water, of course Harare City Council iri kuti tatrita mvura, but havasi kuziva quality yemvura ichazonosvika kubudiriro kumufako wese kuchitungwiza. Ine yatotsvina. So no consumer will be willing to pay for that water. Of course, avari kuti taita ma-processes edu, but hakuna consumer anoda kumwa mvura iyoyo because yatoshata kudhara. That's point number 2. Point number 3 iri kunetsa pa Harare City Council is kune yatinoti revenue water, ndo mvura yavari kupa ma-consumers. Kozoita inonzi non-revenue water is the water that they cannot account for. Kuti iri kuenda kupi? Imwe yacho inogona kunge ichibiwa, imwe yacho inogona kunge ichirasika ma-base pipes. So we need to look kuti mvura iri kutreatwa kuMorton Jeffrey inenge iri 100%, but mvura iri kusvika kuma-consumer maybe i-40%. And Harare is losing 60% of that water, maybe ma-base pipes. Kana kuti imwe inenge ichibiwa, like you walk in Harare unongoona ma-pipes mvura ichingobuda, you know. Kozoita vamwe vekuti muHarare iko zvinozvi dzimwe dzimba dzibude mvura vanonochera mvura maybe kumapipe iwayo akabhesta ikoko. They cannot account for that. So nyaya yekuti vaite the business side of getting revenue pamvura apa Harare City Council, because of their infrastructure and stuff, I think the government should now just step in and say, okay, patrikuita ma-budgets to revamp infrastructure Harare. Let's just put in kana eri 10 million to put my new pipes, my new machines ekutrita mvura and stuff yekumwa yacho ne wastewater. That's what I think. But yanduda kutaura the important point yangu inini ndeyekuti when it comes to water, now isusu takutarisa on a large scale kuti what is happening in Harare. But really, the issue of water starts with you. It starts with you as a home. Okay, how are you dealing with your water? How are you getting your water? How are you disposing your water? Not only water, but waste in general. Because chiri kunetsa eko zvinozvo ndezvekuti panenge pachitaurwa nyaya yema-wetlands. People don't listen. Vanhu havana basa nazvo, vanongosiya vanhu vachinogara ma-wetlands. But ma-wetlands now, that's the cheapest and most effective way of treating water. But pazvinenge zvichitaura kunzi musaise vanhu ma-wetlands, people don't listen. Because mvura yese yemuHarare inozoenda kunana Lepchwero, uchaona kuti ma-areas ese panana Monaville apo, pane ma-wetlands, kunana kuPomonda nguya kuya, area yekunana Pomona. Those are all wetlands, ari kutora mvura kunana Borodho kumusoroko. You go kunana kuwadzana, kuseri kwese kuya kuya, we can call them ma-wetlands. Mvura paya izosvika kulake, mvura ine effect inonzi self-purification. yekuti mvura painofamba iri murwizi ichiflowa inenge ichitoita self purify itself. Saka ma-wetlands ese aya now tavaka manje ma-wetlands. Saka mvura iri kuti kana ukanaya iri kukukura zvese, hapana imwe mvura. Ma-wetlands they act as absorbers ema-floods. Anotora mvura ye it trickles in slowly muma-wetlands ichifamba ichita sei ichitreatwa ma-nitrates mamwe achitobuda. By the time it gets to Lake Chivero, mvura yaya haisi kuenda as a flood, iri kuenda zvishoma nezvishoma. So you find kuti Lake Chivero yaita self purification ichibatsirwa nema-wetlands ese. But now ma-wetlands avakwa hamusisina. Saka mvura kuri kuti ikonozvi mvura ikangonaya muHarare iri kukukura tsvina yese, and it takes probably less than a day kuti mvura yanaya muHarare kana kunana Belvedere isvike kuLake Chivero, because iri kungomhanya and iri kubva yatora netsvina yacho yese yaikepshwa nema-wetlands, ma-fertilizers eminda yese. So nyaya yeHarare ka it's not only one area. The problem is now nyaya yemvura, it's a cycle. Mukavhiringa one area zvinono affect another area. So and then I think the best solution for now is Harare should have ma constructed wetlands avanogona kuita kuti mvura isati yasvika kulake itreatwe naturally, because it's cheaper to treat that water naturally. Ikonozvi kwese kunana Budiriro unonzwa kuti vanhu affectwa nema-floods vari kugara ma-wetlands vanhu ivavo. So I think that's one solution I would give. The other solution is Harare system dzavo too old. Vanhu ava vakavakirwa system iyoyo, there were just 3 million people, and now there is over it's less than more than 3 million vanhu vamu system. So I think the system naturally is also overwhelmed, because ikonozvi vamwe vanhu vari kugara ma-areas musingasvike mvura yekumwa, vari kugara ma-areas mekuti sewage haicollectwe. So you find kuti all those people vari kuita open defecation. So you find kuti mvura painonaya zvakupoluta futi even ma-ground sources emvura. Patinoti paya vanhu isai migodhi yaya yakuaffectwa futi zvese izvo nemvura yekumwa, makolera anowanda. But the last point that I would say is ma-systems eHarare, they are old now. Kuti ma-sewage pipes ayaya mamwe acho sandike yandakaona musuno yakatumirwa na Hopewell ari kuisa mvura directly isina kutreatwa ichiiswa ma-water courses. So mvura iyoyo iri kuto zvakangofanira kuti muri kuisa sewage directly muLake Chivero andimona. But it's not only about Lake Chivero as a water source. It's also affecting even kwatiri kufungira kwacho kuti tichada kuisa ma-ground kuti vanhu vachere ma-boreholes vaite sevatore mvura somewhere, because ma-pipes iwayo ari kulika sewage ichitoenda muground. You cannot drink that water. So uchifind kuti even nyangwe kati handimwe mvura yepatepi, ndinomwa yemuborehole. Yemuborehole repamba pako ipapo it might be polluted as well. So I think we need a holistic approach with guys. Let's have my wetlands, let's preserve water pamba. Kana tine mangwe ma alternative sources. Ngatitei rainwater harvesting, save mvura as Harare residents or as a community. Because ndo zvandinoona kunoku kwese you go kuna South Africa, UK, mvura ma treatment plants, ma wastewater treatment, they've got ma standards ekuti mvura tinoirasa ma water sources, but inofanira kunge yatreatwa to some level. But now kuZimbabwe zvese hazvisi kuitika. And you find kuti even munana UK vanoisa mvura munana Thames River, and ndo munana Thames River futi ndo mavanotora mvura yekumwa vachitreata. So it's common kuti mvura yaweswa yambopinda ma-water courses ndo inotorwa. But we need a holistic approach. A water resources management haitange neHarare City Council, ngaitange padzimba kuti vanhu vari kurasa sei mvura. What I realize kuti vanhu vemuHarare vane utsvina, because mimi pamuri kunorasa mapamba pamarabu ndo pachanaya mvura ndo mvura yamuchamwa iyo. Saka munhu ngaaite pfungwa yekuti ini pandiri kurasa mapamba apa someone has to treat that water and it will affect you because zvichadhurira kanzuru kutrita mvura iyoyo. And let me say this in closing. Sorry, and you, Uncle Jed, ndakutora nguva. What I've realized is even vamafumi vanogona kubuda vachiti tiri kutrita mvura, but haisi kutreatwa according to all the standards mvura iyaya. Because now ndakanzwa imwe issue yaitaurwa yekunzi mapirits efamily planning ayaya paanobuda munana amai vachiita neweti machemicals iwayo anoenda mulake chivero fish dzomwa mvura ine machemicals ese iwayo. And treatment kumoton Jeffrey, they don't have facilities to wipe all those chemicals out. So muchazoona kuti isusu varume tichapedza takumwa futi mvura ine machemicals emafamily planning. So zvirwere hauzozive kuti zviri kubva kupi, but what they only do aiwa ndo pamunozoona kaango Jedi vanhu vakungofila varume they are less masculine, vakungofila sevakadzi. Maissues acho anobva kwakawanda. So I think we need a holistic approach. Tongoziva kuti mvura yandinomwa inake, it starts with me. Thank you very much.
Ndinotenda, thank you very much. Kubvira nhasi ndakunwa mvura yandinge muchigubhu, handichanwa mvura yemutero. Because hauzoketa kaupedzera kuti upedzera kuti wasisified.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually true.
Upedzera kuti wasisified. But anyway, thank you very much. But you brought in quite an interesting point, which is that of building our wetlands and also my purposes in my wetlands. Because you see, the tragedy is we have got the people who are running the city council or people who are city fathers and city mothers, and some of them they are even building on these wetlands. And it's quite a shame and a pity, really. You've got these people that are supposed to be in the know, that are supposed to know kutizo my wetlands are unfound protected, but untona munhu achotora imba ari kansela achotora imba kuto build on a wetland. Zvimwe zvinhu hazviite man. Right, Mgoma Sixpence, come through.
Yeah, thanks, Uncle Jedza. I thought I'd finished, but it was quite, quite nice hearing, technical people speak about their experiences. And I just wanted to push back to, I think, both of the engineers that have spoken. So firstly, I wanted to talk about the business case. And my other brother there is from South Africa. So at some point in my life, I was the head of one of the water departments in South Africa. And water treatment is a very lucrative business. And the assertion that is thrown out, the wholesale excuse, Yakuti people are not paying, Vanavese in the city are not paying what they should pay for water. That is just but an excuse. And I'll give my South African brother very, like actual values. So one of the cities in South Africa, their treatment costs per kiloliter of water is about R1.80 to R2.50. And this is treatment on the plant, right? The conveyance Kuyunza Pamba Parko to the tap, they add another rand for that. So that is, you're looking at about maybe at most R3.50, right? Now, the first 6 kiloliters that you take out of your tap in South Africa, if there are any people on this call who are in South Africa, they can check. You're looking at about 11 to 13 rand, per kiloliter for the first 6 kiloliters. Then the tariff becomes exponential from then on. So essentially, what it means is if you are taking water from a generally good source, right, the margins are very good. Now, given that you're looking at about R3.50 and you're selling the first 6 kiloliters at about 13 rands or 12 rands, it means, Guti, only 30% of people, if they pay in Harare, it means they've paid for everyone else. If you're looking at it from that perspective, obviously that's not what you want to try and do, but it just goes to show you kuti the excuse yekuti vamwe vanhu havasi kubhadhara is neither here nor there, because the 30% should ideally constitute the large industrial users. Like if you've got a meter that is going per Schweppes, if you've got a meter that is going per Coca-Cola, those companies use way more water than what you do in your house, as Uncle Jed. So, our councillors need to be taken to task about these things, and we shouldn't buy into some of these things that they say. Now, like one thing that could be like a mitigating factor is when I spoke of these values, they are really abstracting from a normal dam. Now, the city of Harare could be a victim of their own creation. Pakuti, they have dirtied their source of water, meaning kuti they have made it slightly more difficult to treat, right? And as engineer farmer said, kuti they are now dosing up to 9 chemicals. The challenge there is, but it's of their own making. But then they are also still beholden to antiquated treatment techniques. And, I hope to work with the city of Harare one day, but I'm just going to say my interactions with them. And we have engaged them on multiple occasions. And we've engaged them to say, we as Zimbabweans, we don't want a cent, a penny of their money, but we want to try and help them to overcome their challenges. And that has been met with, very little back from them. We even got to a point where the one time we engaged them and said, we can link you up with, organizations that are looking to fund smart cities, right? And we just need your cooperation. We will put in place the vehicle for you to receive funds such that you can improve your water facilities. That was met with, not much of a response. So, I don't want to taint them too much because I still hope to work with them. Then when it comes to what the last engineer said, the environment, like Lake Chivero, if left for 10 years or for however long, it will sort itself out. Because when you put in these synthetic, these synthetic hormones, these pollutants into a natural ecosystem, what happens is they kill out bacteria which is not used to these parameters, but they leave bacteria which can tolerate these chemicals. And as that bacteria tolerates these chemicals, over time, it learns to eat these chemicals, meaning that you now have a situation where bioremediation becomes possible because the world itself always corrects a mistake given enough time. Now, the challenge with putting Lake Chivero where it is that it short circuits that process and it doesn't give biology and nature enough time to self-correct, as the second engineer said. So as an example, if you had put it downstream and you had 20, 30 kilometers of river to the next town, then the problem wouldn't be as magnified because by the time the water gets to Chegutu or the next town, it means the water has self-regulated and you have allowed biology to correct all your errors of commission or omission. And that is where the city of Harare is wrong. So that is why the position of the lake, from my perspective, is wrong. Yes, it highlights certain things about water, but it means that something needs to be done. And I'll give you an example of the city of Cape Town. The city of Cape Town, as we speak, is building a water treatment plant that is called toilet to tap. So essentially the water that you flush down the toilet, tomorrow you'll be drinking it. But it is accompanied with a very robust treatment regime, and it is accompanied with a very robust water analysis regime. So it can be done, but not in the setup that exists in Zimbabwe currently. So I land there.
Wow, thank you very much for that knowledge as well. But you know what? I want to zero in on what you have said pertaining to offering, the services. This is my own personal opinion, and I hope I'm right. The tragedy that we now have in Zimbabwe is that issues of efficiency they don't apply anymore. They don't look at that as something, that is important. Because people are so used to the status quo, such that anything that comes into better systems to make the leap, to make that change, is kind of difficult for so many reasons. Which one of them I want to say is because people are benefiting, are selfishly benefiting one way or the other. Nenyaya yekuti zvinhu hazvisi kufamba zvakanaka. Isusu we are looking at this kuti zvinhu hazvisi kufamba zvakanaka ka. Tichiti it's bad for the citizens. But there are people that are saying kuti zvinhu hazvisi kufamba zvakanaka and it's good for my pocket. And it's good for me. Saka, when you have individuals who are selfish like that, who are operating at that level, when you introduce something that is good, that will change things for the better, they will resist because they know Kutizo that it will put an end to whatever it is that they have been doing in all along. So it's a pity that we've gotten to that stage, and I want to believe Kuti that is what needs to be corrected as well. Because look at what you're saying. And I want to believe right now, wherever you are, using this knowledge that you've just dropped here, the country where you are today is benefiting. This is why we've always said that Zimbabwe is suffered from a brain drain isingaite yekuti if that brain drain undergoes a reverse mechanism in terms of people going back to Zimbabwe, we will never have shortages of personnel to run our services efficiently in our nation. But it's a pity, Kuti, this is where we are. But I think we should get to a point now whereby these authorities come to a realization, Yekuti, things need to change, and they should embrace change when it is, or they should embrace services when they're offered. What are my services here? But anyway, thank you very much. I do appreciate. Right. Let me go to right. Let me see. And the other okay. Before I go to the next, okay, two boy. You wanted to say? Do you want to quickly say something?
Yeah, I just want to say was uncle kana zvezvakangodhakwa zvakadhakwa. City council, city council.
But we want to get to a point that we
Yeah,
can
yeah, but ngatikorrekte chinhu wanoona kana government yaid ichiziva kuti water is a right, why vakati council icorrecte mabills aayona in zigi? Ndoparadza kuti zvakadhakwa ipapo. Council, they should be able to say maybe we are starting to filing all our bills in USD. Zvavari kuitawo kupetrol. But council yakazvitraya izvozvo ikanzi no, imimi mabills eimimi correctai in this form konzi mari dzavo idzi. Saka council iyei inozoshanda sei kana ichicorrectwa mari in zigi? So mapfumo ngaangopiwa all marights akuti as from tomorrow mabills edu ese emvura ese takuacorrecta in USD. Izvi zvinotanga kuchinja, but mukamupa mazigi guys moti ndio yabhajeti yenyu, but kupetrol uko munocorrecta maUSD. I think my priorities are easy anenge akadhakwa sometimes. So vanhu ngavangochargwa in the same foreign currency yoyo, then tinozonasa magrounds ekuataka mapfumi. But mapfumi akauya kuti guys, saka muda kuti ndizviita sei inini mari yangu ndingopiwa ariwo mazigi yayo. Saka what do you want me to do? In mazigi acho haasi kukwana. samura mapfumo aita sei kana billing yakati wane mukoma uyo billing inogoita efficient sei mukoma kana kuine vamwe vanhu vari kugara nzvimbo dzakunge vasingafanwa kugara dzavakapiwa nemusangano saka kansai muratiita sei nokuti hurumende ikuti zvimwe amapurojekti ari amaomba aya kana waatadza vanobva waipa kucancel zvakafanira kupa kana cancel project yegwai shangani demo nokuti cancel inotanga papi.
Are you repeating that? Is that what has happened with the council?
That is what they say. That's what they say. They're saying it is the council problem, isn't it? But they are not accepting them if they did not build the dams. And the Panama Pumega, ichari mapfume ataure kunana AV kuti maZimbabweans ngaape mvura in the right currency. Mari yacho inenge yapo. But mari yacho isipo, guys, what do you want me to do? Sometimes I feel so ndisingamufarira hangu doing but ari pakona.
Yeah, but anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. Right, tonight we are something.
Uncle, the two boys brought up a very interesting issue. We are not even against paying rates in US dollars. The challenge is the government doesn't want to dollarize. The ZIG was but Nyama ZIG is another issue altogether. Doesn't work. We are not against, and you know what, Uncle Gerard, we are actually paying in under good distortions are ball. We pay rates. We pay we are paying for services that we're not even getting. For the past 8 years, we've been paying rates, but we're not getting them. We're not getting the services. So the issue is not about money. Because Zimbabweans, they are not, they are anti-cheap services here or something like that. Someone said something like that. But that is not true. Because we're paying for services that we're not even getting delivery of anything. They've even gotten to the extent yekuti vakatozosvika papoint yekuti vakati taakuda futi kubhadharisa vanhu futi vari kudhila maballs. And they said because you are that water, you're getting it from the ground, you need to pay money, but we're already paying for services that we're not even getting. So I just wanted to say, we as Harare residents, we're not against paying things in US dollars because we want a city that functions. But it is really beyond us because this is not about us. This is about the government, and the government doesn't want to dollarize, which is their own madness. The ZIG, we told them the ZIG was a mistake, but they said the ZIG was not a mistake, Saga. You know, but the honest truth
is, imagine a good example. Munhu anopinda pasi pevhu anobuda negoridhe anonzi nderake, iye wachira mvura yako pamugudhi wako waunzi mvura yacho ndeyedu. Does that make sense? Zvasiyana nechiizvozvo. Scott akanochera gold rako anonzi nderake, amusamubvunze imi mukamuda gold racho endewo pasi munochera. Iwe waisa mugudhi wako pamba pako wakunzi aiwa mvura yacho ndeyedu.
Right, okay. All right, guys, okay. All right. Okay, let's I want to engineer, you want to I take it you want to respond kuna sixpence, you can do so, and then I'll bring in angry Quebec. I hope I've said that right. Right. Do you want to do that, please?
Yes, Mkoma Gerard. I just want to add, not necessarily respond. I just want to give clarity to both Sixpence and other colleagues that are talking about payment of bills. Okay. Probably after my presentation, maybe I'm going to shed some light. I don't know. Kuna Mkoma Sixpence. And treatment of water is affordable. And and we should not be worried about other people not paying water. I just want to give you this outlook for City of Harare. City of Harare, non-revenue water yataurwa namukoma anchazi ndimukoma vataura kuti tine non-revenue water, which is basically mvura inotreatwa kuMorton Jeffrey, but haisvike kuma-customers. A study by ResearchGate, I think yakaitwa, I'm just forgetting, I think in 2024, inotaura iyo kuti non-revenue water yemuharare was up to 74%, meaning kuti tikatreata 100 liters kuMorton Jeffrey, mvura inosvika kuma-customers edu, it's only 26 liters. And muri kuona
the rest yabuda ningine mapepa akaboka.
iri kufamba nemasefa, tikati mapaipi iri kufamba nemasefa painofamba zvayo ibhasikiti ratizirai. So that's the first aspect. The second aspect now of that 26%, research yakaitwa neInstitute of Development Studies inotaura iyo kuti Harare inocollecta 55%, between 45 and 55% of what it is built. So kwasvika 26% kuma-customer, kwabhiliwa 26%. City of Harare inozongokwanisa kucollecta maybe 13% as revenue, okay? Of that 13%, vanhu vanobhadhara nemazig. Vabhadhara nemazig panoita ma-exchange rate losses anoitika because of zig rinochinja exchange rate. So mukatarisa that difference iyoyo manje, mukasitaurira manje mukoma-6 pence, business rokudhila ndiringotaura the payment state handisandaita the other side, I'll go to the other side. So you are working with roughly on a give and take, tikaona kuti maybe official exchange rate is 26%, then tobva tati exchange rate ye-black market 40%. I don't know kuti vanowana here mari pa-black market, but I don't think so. I think vanopuwa ne-RBZ. So at the end of the day, City of Harare is only able to use 13% of what it's obtaining from its bills. 13% of what it's supposed to have. What company or what enterprise can sustain itself on 13% of revenues? Just hold on, 13% yoyo, the tariffs are low. They are what are called sub-economic tariffs for various reasons. So those are not economic tariffs. You will find that probably if it's required to charge to treat water, maybe $100, the tariff for various reasons, which we can debate, is probably maybe $50. Saka already vavapa 50% less of what they're supposed to get. Saka tavapa 6% of what they're supposed to get. Now, in a situation like that, we can't then say kunamkoma 6 pence. It's easy to, or it's affordable to treat water in Harare. Tabane issue of business and bills. Pane nyaya yekuti to get spare parts into Zimbabwe, to get kuimbota my-electric motor, kuimbota my-pipes, kuimbota chi, zvese izvozvo is more expensive than to import to South Africa. So his example yokupa vachiti it costs a rand to convey water, it costs a rand something to treat water. Yes, maybe in the best cases in South Africa, but because we are in Zimbabwe, our suppliers vanosupply na City of Harare vaya vanonzi mukomadiradi vapiwa tender yekusupply treatment chemicals, my pipes, my electric motor, etc. Kana vachinotsvaka mari dzavo vachibhadhara maduty nechi, those costs end up dzakuuya kumabills there. So we can't compare those two issues because South Africa, their duties are lower. In Zimbabwe, the cost of business is a bit higher. So to compare them, so those are the only things that I wanted to highlight in Kumajara. Thank you so much.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. I see Angry. Please take the mic, and then I see another engineer, Brian. I will then ask you to come after Angry. So Angry, please take the mic.
Hey, hello everyone. I'm from French Canada, like up from the US, and Here, I'm working like on the sanitary and rainwater system, and I have like work on a big water treatment plant, and my father like did it too, like the one that you just talked about, like with microbiology and like getting the thing to dissolve the fecal matter to make it drinkable water by decantation. So honestly, when I found this space, I was really curious to know where you at and what are your challenge and expand. What do you think is going to happen next? Because I see that Aurora is like really a big city. It's not something small, and I don't know like. How can you manage like to connect all the house? Is there is any sewer like that go through all the city, or there's like how can I say this servited like big pipe that go from one side to the other just to bring like a residential area to that place?
Right. My brother, you said you are from which country?
Canada.
You are from Canada, right?
Yes.
Uh, I want to believe what you're enjoying in Canada, right now.
What is happening in Canada?
No, yeah, like the fact that you've got water that comes through the these the taps. You've got the sewer
Yeah, yeah,
system that runs it. That is what we used to have,
yeah. We use
or
like
or or that is what is there in Zimbabwe. But it's only that it is not working as it is supposed to be working.
like our infrastructure are failing, like it's really bad, but we cannot talk about it like publicly because it will like cause problem. But everything is too small, and it's getting old because we built it like 15 16 17 year ago, and now everything is starting to fail, and we need like to repair it and everything.
Also, you are saying that you're experiencing the same problems as well.
Yeah, so
Right.
the
All
big
right.
problem with that is that we use river water to treat it. After that, it come like in road, like with like aqueduct, and we don't pay for water here, but we pay with our tax. And this was the big problem because tax have never been going up for water, or they didn't put like meter, and now we don't have money to repair the infrastructure, so tax will go so up that it's going to create a huge problem. And what I'm seeing in your infrastructure, do you know what is to make a pipe inside a pipe without like opening the road? Do you know that process?
No, I'm not. I'm not a fund in that area. Maybe some of the guys here who are on this platform, can help. Is there anyone who can help answer our brother here? Engineer Brian, are you able to answer our brother here?
Uh, uh, yeah, I'm curious to know because honestly, I found your problem like that you speak about first. So it's really important like to put all people together to speak about it. And I'm getting curious about maybe if I can help you out with the thing that you're doing, because I think you're in more like necessity to have water like in your country, because it's really hot and everything is really necessary.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Engineer Brian.
Yes, thank you, Uncle. Yeah, this is my first time probably to be speaking in your spaces. I usually
Oh,
just
thank you.
follow them and follow from the terraces. But this one is probably maybe something that I might share maybe my 2 cents. Right. So maybe what I can start with is that in these places where we are domiciled, like for example, I'm working on some water treatment projects, and there is this project that we are doing for a certain plant. In this plant, it supplies only about less than 200 people, but the project cost for that is nearly 1 million euros, and this project is being implemented. So if you have to look at our situation in Zim, it's very sorry and very pathetic. Like, and it's actually a big problem which we cannot just put all the blame on COH, on the city of Harare. It's actually a bigger problem that the government was actually supposed to be stepping in to find ways of solving this problem. Because in other places like where we are, if the water is bad, and even if it's affecting just a few people, they are prepared to do that project so that people can actually have clean water in their tapes. Um, so if you were to look at the situation that we have, it's quite big and quite complex. Like for example, this water source that we have, Morton Jeffrey, it doesn't have the capacity to treat that water. Yes, they can say that they are following the WHO guidelines and the like and the like, but that water is actually very dirty, and there is no way that the processes we have can actually treat this water. At best, maybe what we have at Morton Jeffrey is probably maybe they try to maybe to deal with the pH first, and then they do maybe the sedimentation and filtration, and then from that they chlorinate. But most of the impurities, they will still pass through all those stages, such that the final water is full of maybe hormones, the pesticides, the heavy metals, and a lot of toxins. They can actually pass through all those processes, and they are coming to the taps of people. Um, for example, if you take fresh water from the tap, maybe 20-liter bucket, you leave it aside, maybe like for it to sediment. Within some few hours, you see a layer, like it's something will settle. You see a layer, greenish, blackish layer, and that water is not fit for human consumption. And for the solutions, what I think um, is probably a long-term solution, because the challenge that we now have is that the demand for the water is now very high, more than the capacity. But the main challenge, or on the solutions, what I think uh, we need to do is probably maybe one of those crazy taxes from Umtuli. They should actually go towards the treatment of water so that people can actually have better water, because people of Harare on their own, they cannot do this. I actually think we must have probably a water body, which then which is responsible for making sure that there are water standards, and they make sure that that water body is the one that will be probably monitoring the water assets. Yes, the city of Harare and all the other councils, they'll be doing the running, like the running of the water treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant. But we probably need something like a water body, which is the one that will probably look at even the supply demand, so that for this city we need so much water. How much are we producing? And also like doing the audit of the treatment plant itself and think that okay, fine, is this still worth it? What areas can we improve? This cannot be done by city of Harare. They might not, like, they don't have firstly the resources, the expertise, and the time. And one challenge about the councils is that they are more of uh, political stuff that goes there, which disrupt progress. I once did a project sometime in Shavani. We were rehabilitating a Swartman plant. So the decision makers on that project, they were the councillors. So there will be a council meeting, and the councillors, some of them, they couldn't even write their names. Those were the people that were making decisions on what should be done on a water treatment project. So if we give power to such people, obviously we might not achieve much progress. But if you can have a water body that is responsible for probably pursuing the designing, the maintaining, the upgrading, and also planning of new treatment plants, and that body should probably be funded by the government. But then obviously the day-to-day running of those plants, it will be left with the council. I think that can actually help. Like where I am here, with a water body, which is the one that will actually do like the tenders, they monitor the projects, they but then the final project, once it is delivered, the council is the one that makes sure that the day-to-day running is um is in place. That's what I think should be probably a long-term solution. But there's something that I would want to see of all the treated water. Like the statistics say, even in developed countries, they lose up to 40% of their treated water. So it's not a problem in Harare Chete. So if nyika dzakarongeka kana dzichiluza about 40%, it means it's maybe twice in Harare. So we have actually a bigger problem than what we can think of. And also there is a risk yekuti once even chero mvura yange yatreatwa yachena, if it goes through the network, because they are supposed to be validation yekuti once mvura yatreatwa, we should have a system where they should be validating that this water yamita like my requirements ayo. And if we treat the water, inofana kutreatwa in such a way that as it goes in the network, in a residual treatment yainayo along the network, so that I contaminate the bacteria in my old pipes and the like, which I don't think we might be doing that. Then another issue that I've been always talking about mvura kana in what we call my TOCs, like that organic content, kana reach a certain limit, then tikachlorinata mvura iyoyo tine risk create what we call trihalomethane. Zvinhu izvi zviri carcinogenic. Saka kana mvura yedu ikange ichiuya ine maorganics akawanda, then tibva taichlorinata, because chlorination, that's the last part of disinfection yatinoita mvura yedu. But kana ine TOC yakawanda, it means there is a risk that mvura yatiri pambwa necity of Harare ine chemicals are harmful to people, whether you don't drink it but you bath with it. So either way, this issue needs to be solved, and it's a bigger problem than we can actually think, because all the industrial waste dziri kungozonopinda, so mune heavy metals, pesticides, hormones, and everything. It's actually a disaster. This issue, the government yaifanira kunge yakatopindira panyaya iyi, they take over, then they find ways yekuti how can they work it out to solve this problem, because hazvisi kuaffecta city of Harare chete. Matowns mazhinji, they don't have waste water treatment plants, so waste yacho iri kungonodischargwa, then yongozoita find its way into the water bodies. But if we can have probably like zvakambenge zvaitwa kumashure kuti zinwa ndo yanga yakudidididi, but the mistake yavakaita ndeyekuti zinwa tried to take over like water assets, which is not the case. Zinwa aifanira kungomira kuti like that's the board iri kumeka sure kuti all those assets they are working zvakanaka, dzasvika end of life, they do my projects, whether rehabilitate, they build my new project, like my new treatment plants, and my pipe work, they should make sure kuti like my pipe work dzemuharare dzese dzakatosvika end of life, which means dzaifanira kunge dziri kutochinjwa. So it's a bigger project yekuti we want to change all that pipe work, and that cannot be done by city of Harare on its own, because haina resources, haina even like the human resource inogona kuita all those things. So this is bigger than city of Harare. It's something chekuti chinoda kuti government yedu itore a better step yekuti how best can we solve this problem. That's my thinking.
Right. Yeah, thank you very much, for that. Let us move on. Tamsanga, please take the mic.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ndlovu, my brother, as I would like to say.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and
you're welcome.
Before I make my contribution, the quality of this particular space speaks to my point last time when I said it should really ideally sit during the peak hours of a ZBC production. Because imagine that the people in Zimbabwe, in Harare, the 2 million residents in Harare, might actually be missing out on such an important subject that affects their lives, that affects their decision-making process, that affects how they should talk to their councillors, what they should talk to their MPs about, that should affect how they make a determination of the urgency of this matter. And I want to hope that I'll be allowed to be as frank as I can in the context of the respect for the professionals that are on the platform that have given feedback. One of the things that I did earlier in life, I spent 7 years in engineering, so I do understand the issues that are being raised. And also I did some projects with Zimforce at the time when things were still good. I don't want to give away my age. But I want to start by saying that I think where we are now, we can find solutions. And I would like the engineers and other people to get in touch, as we say, in the DMs and others, so that we can take these things and solutions forward. But I also want to be frank and say, one of the major problems that we have that have led to where we are now is the politics. When the late Skanyison Ndlovu said Zimbabwe should not have had cholera and blamed it on sanctions and the water quality in Harare in particular, people took him for fools at the time. But in reality, what actually happened was the company that was doing the water treatment in Harare and throughout the country in major cities was put on sanctions. And at that time, it only meant that these city councils, in order to treat properly within the treatment plants that they had to import the chemicals that they used for the water treatment. In addition to doing that, because the country was under sanctions, the contracts to repair these sewer systems, because there were contracts to repair those sewer systems, to monitor those sewer systems, to detect where the leakages were, and the instruments to be able to, correct that system. All those systems and the insurances and everything else fell apart because of the sanctions. The third element was that when you were now importing these chemicals, or if you were trying to import anything to do with repairing these, reticulation systems, as we call them, there was now a premium on how much it actually cost. So I agree with the engineers that were saying that South Africa will be cheaper and Zimbabwe is more expensive. The reason why Zimbabwe is more expensive is because there is a premium, because you are trying to work around the sanctions that are there. You can't order from the people that supplied the piping system in the first place. You can't rely on the insurance systems that were in place. You can't rely, and the company that was now put, once the IDC companies that were doing these chemicals were put under sanctions, the research and development aspect of what was going on to what Sixpence was talking about, where you now have to put a monitoring system on what you are treating when it comes from your toilet and sewage system, trying to treat what is in Lake Chivero and making an assessment there and doing all these lab tests and everything else. The research and development element was lost as well. So now you have that scenario where people, not much is happening in Lake Chivero, which is why you're having all these animals and Emma struggling and animals dying, and probably a lot of cancers that are now being seen in Harare and other towns. The amount of, or the number of people now that are having cancer in Zimbabwe, in these towns in particular, that have reticulation problems is huge. And there's not enough even research to be able to link that to all these things. But when you are listening to some of these engineers now talking about what is potentially happening and the problems that might be there, it then begins to make sense. Especially, I talk because I was working on the projects and reticulation issues in Bulawayo in particular. Bulawayo has a slight advantage. Bulawayo is still losing about 50% of treated water, which is better than Harare. But Bulawayo also sits like on a platoon. So you've got, when you go west, you are going downhill towards Vic Falls. When you go east towards Mud South, you're also going down. So the dams, most of the supply dams that supply Bulawayo are coming from Mud South. And so you're pumping upstream. But what Bulawayo has now been doing is pumping the sewage and all that kind of stuff into Mkuza, which is the other direction. But the hope was that Mkuza is long enough before you get to Kwaishangani. So the treatment element and all that, the process, the engineering process that people were talking about, because Kwaishangani is several 100 kilometers west of Bulawayo or northwest, or whatever it is. So these things are quite serious, but it is a combination or a conversation that we also need to have with the councillors. I don't want to blame these councillors, which is why I was talking about sanctions and the politics initially. For many years, the local government ministers had been trying to get this reticulation system to work. But it was a tug of war politically between the local government ministers, who were controlled by the ruling party, and the councils, which were controlled by the opposition, to an extent that a lot of engineers, when I listen to Sixpence, I understand what he's talking about, because I've got in my inbox about 45 engineers from Bulawayo who are giving practical examples that over the years, they have approached the opposition-led city councils with solutions, even offering not to be paid at all. But they kept being told, no, we don't want your solutions. So I would, understand that this is what was happening at the time. There were some councillors who believed that the only way to change a government was to collapse everything, give the impression that nothing works, Zimbabwe is a failed state, and all that kind of stuff. And also that tug of war with the local government. And I remember when Minister Julai Moyo was minister, he even brought in a lot of people who were prepared to redo the entire sewer system at no cost at all in the short term. And then, of course, revising the tariffs and, affecting what Treasury puts in as subsidies in the water. It was difficult. The city council said no. So, but now my view, which is why I'm encouraging guys to come back and let's talk, let's solve, let's help our countries. Both the mayor of Bulawayo and the new version of his worship in Harare have a different view. They now don't mind being seen with the president of the country or the minister from the other side, or coming to Treasury and discussing their needs. That's why you've seen money now being pumped into the things that they have asked for. Their attitude is totally different now. So, and I would want to believe that if these guys, these engineers come back, they will actually be allowed to assist Harare, do the reticulation system, do the lab tests, provide solutions, as well as Bulawayo. That should now be allowed. I don't think there will be the kind of frustration or resistance that they met in the past, because they were just not being given a reason why these city councils were refusing to accept, because now it's actually an advantage, because when you do a new reticulation system, you have new ways of making a detection. You can detect the quality of the water as it goes through. You can detect when there's a leak somewhere. You can repair very quickly. You can because my view and my assessment and what we have actually, the work that we have done, is that sorting out the reticulation system is equivalent to building 2 dams, because there's so much wastage that we're having. And I think, politically working together, whatever political party, once they're councillors and ministers, if they work together, it then also means that the premium on what we pay when we get these systems in will be less. You need to resuscitate the research and development that these companies, local companies under IDC, were doing, and probably move some of that to universities. And the not brain drain, but the engineers that we had, that we lost. If you go to the UK, if you go to the Middle East, Dubai and other places, you go to South Africa, you go to America, you'll find that there are a lot of Zimbabwean engineers in the water area who are running plants over there, who have solutions that are ready to be brought over. Like I said, I've got 45 actually in my inbox, and I don't mind having more. And I think we can discuss, we can find solutions. But one of the major solutions that is needed is to remove politics from things that affect the lives of the people. We are sitting on a time bomb. Harare is even in a worse situation. Even a couple of years ago, I remember there were attempts to redo the system. We worked with some engineers. The engineers in Zimbabwe that are remaining there, even if they are working for the city council, those people know their work. They will tell you everything you need to know about the system and where the problems are. The only problem they have, and the frustration that they have, is that the political leadership at both levels makes it very difficult for them to do the things they want to do. It's like doctors who are not allowed to operate on a patient that's lying on a table, although they have the skills and the ability to do it. So I think that's where we are. I don't want people to lose hope, but time is running out if we can't get solutions. I hear about the quality of the councillors and all. It's the political system that we have. But, next time, I think people can vote depending on the quality of those councillors. But for now, those are the people we have. We should be able to work with them. Once they also realize that destroying wetlands has got implications, refusing to allow engineers to come and do the reticulation system has got implications. Once they also then realize their own health is in trouble, then there will be problems. So the last thing I want to address, Uncle Jed, is the issue about the Water Act that we have with respect to the boreholes. So the responsibility that ZINWA has is to provide raw water. And then that raw water has to be provided or be accessible to everybody and anybody in the country, within the national interest and national security, all that kind of stuff. That's why it's a parastatal. So, but the responsibility to take the water from wherever it is to the residents is that of the city council. So reticulation is for the city council. So if you are doing a borehole, the law says you need permission from ZINWA to be able to sink your borehole in a certain area, and you pay the levies and the license fees that are required. Part of that is it's a reason for hydrology. The law protects that water source, because there is a possibility that there can be too many boreholes in one area that probably affects the water table and the wetlands, and there's so much that they have to consider before they actually allow. But what has been happening in Zim, because of the problems and the economy and the way that things are, ZINWA was allowing people to sink boreholes before they even have permission to do so, and then go back and try to regularize. So if you go to areas like Masvingo now, you will hear that ZINWA is going into villages and saying, you have a borehole here, this is what you need to pay. In reality, the process should have been the other way around, where before you even sink that borehole, you need to get that permission, you pay, because they have maps and they can determine that, no, you can't sink a borehole here because this is the impact that this borehole is going to have in the ecosystem and the environment. And there are so many other things. There's a long tick box that they have to do. So it's not as simple as saying, oh, I sank my borehole, why are you coming to disturb me and ask me to pay? It's for the protection of that water source. As the law, asks for. It's only that sometimes we don't get an opportunity to probably invite some of the MPs or ministers. If you're on ZBC, you would have that, Uncle Jed, and people then can explain these things so that even if you have sunk your own borehole in town or somewhere else, you then can volunteer to go and pay or register that borehole. Because you know that there's a database that's needed to be able to determine what others can do, or if there's a problem, or if there's infection in that area, they have a responsibility to say, you're on the database. We are telling you that your borehole is not safe to use for the next 6 months because we have detected a problem. So there are so many health-related issues, public health issues. But I thought I could just share that. But let's be positive, guys. The councils now and the government, they are now prepared to work together to find solutions on this. Thanks.
Right. There's a point that was put across by former Mayor Herbert Gomba when Sixpence was talking about offering, services. You mentioned that, what type of services did they want to, did they want to offer, or they wanted to offer, because that must be discussed in the context of the law. And then he goes on to say, in Zim, services must be tendered for. If free, then council must be informed. However, if it was to be a joint venture, then the Joint Ventures Act kicks in. Can this be discussed? So you, my brother, as an individual who is, working or who's got a database of some of these, engineers that you are talking to, right now, are you aware of what the former mayor has raised? And if so, what kind of services are you trying to partner or to offer the city, or the city council?
Okay, so this is what happened, Uncle Ted. There's what. Okay, so let me move you away from water and give you an example of roads.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there were problems with roads in Harare. What did the government do? So the government at the time was of the impression that the city council in Harare was deliberately refusing to allow people to sort out roads and potholes and all that kind of stuff. That was the view of the government. Whether it was right or wrong is another story. So what did the government do? They had a declaration of emergency on how the approach to the roads was done. Mm-hmm. Now, when you go to Harare today, you find that most roads are done. You don't have as many potholes as you had. And I even had a conversation with one industrialist in Southerton, was running a very important industry and had factories and all that. But you couldn't get to her office because there were the potholes there were shocking. And then my question to her was, you are making millions here. Why can't you just sort out this road? It's 20 meters or 50 meters. And then she kept saying, I've tried and the city council is refusing. It's my money, I want to do it, it's my road. It's the damage to my customers' vehicles and my vehicles and rah. But the bottom line here is water situation can easily be that emergency. There is nothing that stops these engineers who are Zimbabweans who have solutions from coming to say, City Council, here is what we believe a solution is. And then Treasury and then Cabinet and others can come and say, okay, how much is required? If we need 500 million to do Harare reticulation system, let's get it done. This is an emergency. You don't need to be talking about these tenders and looking for someone from Bikita to come and be a partner and I know what the mayor is talking about. It's just an excuse. When there's an emergency, things get done. People sit down. These engineers that have been coming with real solutions that benefit the city. They understand these things. It's their area. Most of them are Zimbabwean. They started off at these city councils anyway. They were educated at UZ and NAST. And they know what they're talking about. So for the mayor, I understand what the mayor is saying. That's just a bottleneck and an excuse. You can't be telling people, when you have an emergency like these, things get done. When the airport needs to be done, government gets it done. When the city council wants something done, it will be done. It is as simple as that.
Right. Thank you very much. Yeah, let us, can I park you, right there? Anyway, the mayor is here. The mayor, Mayor Gomba is here. When there's a space, I'll bring you up. Or if there's anyone who wants to take a sabbatical from the speaker's position, please, you can do so. And then I'll allow others, to come in. So now I want to go, in this order. Can I have Hope Gubu, followed by Bartholomew and Citizen Z? Let us do that order quickly, and then I'll bring in the mayor into the conversation and Magneto. Right, please go ahead, Hope.
Thank you, Uncle, for this space. And this is a very interesting topic that we are discussing today, and I'll try to compress my points so that I give others a chance. I think in one of the spaces we had last year before elections, I did mention something along the lines, and what I can see now is that the bubble is best. And what am I talking about? When you look at the city of Harare and the initial planning of the city, and what we currently have because of many other reasons, rural to urban migration and everyone wanting to go to Harare, there is insurmountable pressure.
Your network iri kuti mawedzi ari kutsengwa, so saka message yenyu is not coming across clear. Ruri mukataura apa ibva yakata mozotaura, saka we can't make out what you have said kumashure uko. Handikuziva kuti izvo muri pakanaka here network wise.
Ndiri pari right. Yes.
All right. Please go ahead then.
I still having problems. Let me.
No,
I think uda vari kutaura nevari pamaheadphones voice ravo riri mumafu rinenge rine sound rokuinterview.
Yeah, are you on my headphones as well?
Yes, ndandi pama earphones.
Aiwa, ndikukumbira kuti mubvise kana muri pakasununguka bvisai henyu, and then so that we can be in a position to hear you.
How about now, Uncle? Is there any improvement?
Yeah, taura henyu tinzwe.
Okay. So what we have, and obviously the topical issues, the contamination of the water, the main water body supplying Harare at the moment. But what I can almost tell you, what I have said before, is that because of the problem that we discussed, my services we don't have sufficient infrastructure to cater for the numbers. We are going to have problems with transport. We are going to have problems with roads, communication system. We are going to have problems with water as we are now, electricity. We are going to have problems with refuse collection and management. We are going to have problems with just having order in the city. This is important, and it is very important for right now. Put blame game We need to put it on the side. There is no need where we are now. The city can be closed. There is no need for politicking. There is no need for blame, point scoring, blame shifting, and grandstanding. Central government, local authority, municipality, everyone has to work together. This is a state of emergency. The way I look at it, if it helps to save humanity and civilization, especially in the urban centers. So it and we need to understand. I think this is important for people to understand, especially people in these areas affected, to understand that we can all want the best water quality of water. We can all want the best roads. We can all want the best electrical connections and supply communication. But these things need they need a lifeline. They need a body needs blood, need food, need oxygen. You cannot have services if you are not paying competitive rates and taxes for these services. Saka chero tikafixa this water that has been contaminated, but if people expect to get the water for free of charge, it will not take long until we have the problem uh, emerge again or resurface again. Many cities across the world, they have come up with a different mechanism to make sure that there is service and also there is money generated from the provision of that service to 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 maintain some form of longevity to keep the service running. If we are not going to have competitive rates to pay for the sustenance of that service, we're not going anywhere. Otherwise, we'll just be treating symptoms, but not going to the core. And it will be unfair for me to not mention what I think might be solution. I think what we have at this point is this is an emergent situation. It needs to be dealt with in phases. So we have the short-term solutions, the medium-term solutions, and the long-term solutions. We cannot expect to build a dam today or an alternative source today and supply clean water to Harare tomorrow, right? So I think in the short term, we need to find out where the contamination is coming from and see if we can plug that contamination, if we can stop that contamination, right? And see if we can find alternative sources of water like bore. When we say bore, I'm not necessarily saying let's go house by house and drill bores. Let's find the aquifers, the underground streams, drill bores to be able to supply not really sporadic, but really structured, really well planned. And then we need to treat that water. And people need to understand that the water that they are going to have in the short term is going to be more expensive because we have a problem. Otherwise, if we drink that contaminated water, we will have an even bigger problem. In the medium term, we need to put in place a team of specialists to undertake a feasibility study to come up with solutions, quick solutions and long-term solutions. And we need to now implement replacement of some of this infrastructure, replace my pipes, replace my sewer pipes. Where is the sewer going? How is it being treated? There's no driver past the Mbudzi interchange here, tichiona all that water coming from Chitungwiza or wherever and going wherever. We need to know. I've always wondered and asked myself, where is this water going? Is it going to a sewer plant or is it just flowing into natural water bodies? And in the long term, obviously, we know what we need to do in the long term. We need to have another dam. Lake Chivero is probably not sufficient to supply Harare now. We need to have other sources of water, and government need to dedicate funding. Kwete zvepolitics kana zvekuita sei kuti tinyatsovaka dhemu rinobatsira kugadzira Harare. But this is a big one. Perhaps we need to find a way to develop other places so that everyone doesn't necessarily come to Harare. I think Harare has had enough numbers for now. Tobomira, it's a difficult one, but it's a very important question to ask. Do we need to continue expanding this city when it cannot sustain? It doesn't have enough capacity to sustain expansion. Stop corruption, and obviously we need to make sure we attract skills. We can have all these brilliant ideas, but if we don't have my engineers, if we don't have people who are competent enough to do the job, we always have problems. And my last point in landing is that we need to revive our public works. What I've realized is that if you get a public sector contractor to do just a pipe replacement, he will charge you an arm and a leg because you don't always replace pipes, isn't it? But if you have such significant scope of works for service rehabilitation, like where we are in Harare now, we don't need, we don't need, but it will save us a great deal to actually do some of these things in-house. You buy your excavator, you buy your articulated backfill equipment, you get your pipes, and you probably just paying cost when you do that than getting people who will be spending half the money on the service and the other half on shoes and cars for people who are not contributing to the economy. I thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. I appreciate. Right. Let's go quickly to the next speaker, please.
Thank you very much, Uncle Jeds. I hope I'm audible.
Yes,
thank you for the opportunity.
Please go ahead.
Of Titus also. Greetings to all the previous speakers and all the speakers who are lining up and all the listeners and unanimous listeners as well. This is my little 2 cents. I think somewhere we are discussing, but we are deviating the headline which we are having here, or the heading, because if you say who is to blame lecture water pollution, I think it's not more about engineering factor, because I see now that as engineers we are coming in, but I don't think it's only engineering issue which lead to this pollution. There's also a lot of other areas which are lacking, which led to this point which we are today. So sometimes I think politics must not make us to dance nicely and run away from an honest point of view. Because if you look, Ango Jets, all the expertise in which we can talk here, the issue is where is the money to pay those people? Where is it coming from? When the government realized that they got a special event for SADC, right? They take over, right? And who said no for that takeover? Nobody. They take over, they fix, right? So I just want to understand why they can't take over and fix. Because nobody will ask them. If they take over, if they wake up today and say, right, we are putting this city council under administration, we are doing ABCD, we are doing damage control, nobody will stop them. So this thing for trying to say there are some engineers who are in the opposition and councillors, no, guys, let's be honest here. Because even us as draftsmen, we can explain a lot of cadastral, lot of things lacking in the city, but we are not going to come in that angle. We will come with a point of view that we need a proper governance which have budgets, no corruption, proper project planning. Then we talk of these engineers and draftsmen and laboratories and whatever, because we can have all those people, Angojets. Within 30 minutes right now, if you want to gather lab technicians, draftsmen, wherever, you find it in Zimbabwe, it's there. But where is the money to pay those people? Who is supposed to look for that money? That's the question which we are supposed to stand and ask ourselves here. I'm not saying opposition, they got some negative, they don't have negative. They got also their weakness, Angojet. They got their weakness. I agree. But let's not quickly jump to say there were engineers who want to help and the opposition refused. Hi, let's have that evidence here. And the government was just to keep quiet. Sometimes let's try to be honest.
Are you doubting that?
Angojets, as an interim host here,
I would write that. Are you doubting that their lived experience? Could they try to approach the city council and they were, nothing happened? Are you doubting them? What sort of evidence are you looking for when somebody is telling their lived the truth?
Okay, Angojets, I don't want to personalize the space. Let me put my points and move on. This is my take on your question. We also involve in this Harare City Council. We do a lot of work there, but it's not very important for me to explain that here. But what I want is, what is the solution to the pollution which is coming into Lake Chiwero, and why all those stands which are maybe informal and whatever, who authorized, and what is lacking, where are the site plans, where are the cadastral? Those are some of the factors which you need to look at. But right now, if we say engineers, I agree. But somewhere, look, Angojets, let's be honest here. Where's the money to treat the water? Where's the money to pay the engineers? Where's the money to pay the laboratories? You understand? Where's the money to buy the chemicals? Let's just go straight into that issue and see where the solution can come up with. Because if you say the engineers were rejected, are you telling me that those engineers will want to contribute money to buy the chemicals needed at Jeffrey Morton? Are you trying to tell me that those engineers?
I know, but I don't think this whole conversation was about that. It's a point that was raised, but this whole conversation wasn't about the engineers being rebuffed, or City of Harare refusing to accept the help from the engineers. But there's a whole lot that has been discussed in terms of even solutions to dealing with the water crisis, the sewage crisis, the pollution crisis, which is at Lake Chiwero. So many people have chimed in and and spoken about that. Maybe you came in at a time whereby that conversation was happening, but I don't think the whole 3 hours was we preoccupied ourselves with talking about the city council not accepting help from these engineers. It's something that came in along the way.
I agree with you, Angojets, but as I listened since the beginning of the space, it's councillors, engineers, councillors. I'm trying to understand the responsibility of the councillor in the dam there. You know the councillor's position, where the point where the councillor is standing.
No, but
where the water is treated.
But you're not being fair here. When people were speaking,
okay, I'm not being fair, right?
People spoke about the chain, the supply chain. That it starts from central government that are responsible for the dams, building of the dams, and then it goes on to the council that are responsible for drawing the water. Zinwa was brought in, IMA was brought in, until the water gets to the to the final destination, which is the tap in your home. So all this here was spoken about in terms of where the blame should be or in terms of looking at this, supply chain or this ecosystem that is in place, and then try to understand where the blame is. Like somebody spoke about the building of the dam, to say that we don't have as many dams as we should have. So it means the blame goes to central government. And then you look at the council. The council are the ones that are responsible for drawing the water, and seeing that the water that they are drawing is clean, and stuff like that. So if they're supplying water that is not clean, then the blame goes to them. And then you look at Zinwa, what is their role? You look at IMA, what is their role? All these have been talked about, have been discussed in trying to understand where the issue here. I don't think it is much more about which individual is being blamed more, but it is trying to understand, or which entity is being blamed more, but it is trying to understand where we, how things work, so that become knowledgeable and understand. And I think that was what the conversation has been all about thus far.
Ndodzoka hangu.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, right. Now kutanga ndakubvunzai mubvunzo angojenzi ndaprocedure. Imimi angojenzi mimi. Mastands akaallocatwa vanhu vakavaka informal, pasina site plan, pasina any planning yesiwa nechi. Munhu wamunoblema ndiani?
Yaallocatwa nani?
Angojenzi. Munhu wamunonanga ndiani?
Understand yacho inenge yaallocatwa nani? Ikaallocatwa necouncil vasina kuita due diligence yekuita make sure kuti the area has been serviced, because the blame goes into them.
Yeah. And then on the other side of the coin,
iwo wacho futi kani uri kuvaka ipapo kani unofanira kuziva kuti izvo pauri kuvaka pacho ninge pakamira sei. What kind of an individual are you anoziva kuti izvo kugara muHarare kunoda zvinhu zvakati, but I just prepared to just go and vaka there.
Okay, thank you very much. Saka nyaya iripo ndeyekuti angojedzeka pane vanhu vanenge vaida kupoliticize issue iyi. Ngatimbomirai kupoliticize, ngatingotaurai mafacts neforensic nemasolution ari kudiwa, because imi mukauya kupolitics musafunga kuti tei tisinawo imwe engo yatogona kuuya nayo, tinogona kuuya nayo, because tinotozivawo panenge pane weakness acho iwana.
Far from being political.
Angojedzi. Imimi kana munhu achitaura kuti
let us be honest, yes, this conversation being a political conversation so far.
Uncle, the conversation has been very technical. It has been very good, very educational. I think Mkoma we are maybe where it got political, but it's been very educational, very technical.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me wrap up Angojedzi. Nyaya ingoripo Angojedzi ndeyekuti chokwadi chaicho hachinyanyi kuputsa ukama. Ini pandibata ndikuti hanzi makansela akaramba kana kuti municipalities akaramba ABCD. Izvozvo zvinhu izvozvo hatina evidence nazvo. Ngatimbozvimirai izvo. Ndopa ndangobatikana napo papolitics apa. Otherwise nyaya yeconstruction nekuti titsvage masolutions Angojedzi kuti toita sei planning, petwa replanning new pipes kana kuvakwa madam, zvinhu zvakanaka straight. But nyaya yekuda kujamba kuti hanzi manhingi opposition akaramba zvakati kubva year 2000, ngatimbomirai ikona iyoyo, because munhu wese chokwadi anochiziva panapa. Ngatimire ikona iyoyo.
Okay, ndo pane engo yenyu kuti pambodzi zoparambwa mazi. Okay, it's fine, I hear you.
Yes. Saka nyaya ingoripo ndeyekuti Angojedzi ngapatsvagwe solution yekuti chivero hove zvodzofa kudai. Hapana here imwe way ingagona kuitwa kuti patsvagwe kana kuvakwa rimwe dhamu at a certain better site inenge isina this kind of pollution kana masiltation anenge ane zvinhu zviri dangerous. Irora basa revanhu veEMA nemasurveyors kuti vaite basa iroro zvakanaka nekuongorora kuti location yewater source iyoyo inge iri safe and ecosystem yacho iyoyo iri protected. I think zvinhu izvozvo zvinhu zviri right. Nyaya yekuboorwa kwezvibhorani mutauni Angojets ina handisi kuwirirana nayo kuti imwe neimwe imba inge ine chibhoro mugodhi Harare yese. Izvozvo tiri kuona sokuti hasi zvinhu zvakanaka muguta reHarare. Tinoda kuti mapaipi emvura afambe aine mvura yakachena, vanhu vachichera mvura dzavo, vachimwa mvura dzavo, vane confidence. I think zvinhu zvakanaka. Nyaya yekuboora matsime pamberi pedzimba mutauni, I think structural integrity is on the long run zvichaaffecta dzimba dzakawanda. And mukungoona weather patterns atiri kuexperience, mvura iri kuya yakawanda, migodhi yachekwa dzimba dzese pamberi. Hazvisi zvinhu zvakanaka izvozvo. Saka ndo input zvangu yandoda kungovawo nayo iyoyo. But zvokuzoda kubata zvokuti opposition chichi ngatimbomira ngatitaurei mafacts sezvaari tichingokandirana saizvozvo tichifamba. Nenyaya yangu yebasa reCV ndoperera zvangu ipapo. CV rangu nonga ndakaunda sharp.
All right, tichariendesa kunhingiriki kudepartment. All right, Citizen Z, please come through.
Thank you, Uncle.
And then I'll ask Citizen Z quickly come through, and then I'll ask Magneto to come in, because I know Gudizo, your presentations are quite short, and then I'll bring in former Mayor Herbert Gomba so that we can have another proper chat. Right, please, Citizen Z, quickly come through.
Thank you, Angus. With me, I'll speak as a drinker of water. That is my main stance. These other things of political parties, seeing that political parties do not give a life. So as a drinker of water with family members that drink water. Because there is a lot of lying. I said this earlier on. If we allow the normal talk that we have had with water for the last 20 years in Zimbabwe, you rather turn around and write the topic on the thing, not as problems of sewage in Harare. Just write it as jokes, usual. Because we are going to be spinned out here by politicians and amateur politicians and semi-professional politicians. But at the end of the day, all of us are going to be spinned here. We'll be waking up tomorrow still drinking sewage water. We have to be very sure that we are drinkers of water, that have gone to school and are able to read. Whilst I'm talking to you, uncles, I have got my 4 laptops in front of me with reports as old as 1975 of pollution levels, alarming pollution levels at Lake Chiwero. 1975. The oldest report I've got is 1966. It is not called Lake Chiwero at that time. It's called Lake Chiwero after this side of independence. But I've got the reports. I've got 7 reports. The last report is done in 2024. So we're looking, what are we looking at here? We're looking at a problem that has been in existence since the 60s. We're only touching the exciting end of it at this moment in time. Is the Lake Chiwero going to disappear? No. Is the pollution going to increase? Yes. This is the case in almost every single point in Zimbabwe. Again, as a drinker of water from the tap, not from the bowl that we go and buy, but from the tap, because we don't have money to go and buy the bottled water. The first and foremost problem, there is not enough water for Harare, for Bulawayo, for any town, especially those 2 towns. That's the first and most problem. There is not enough. For the population that we have, there is not enough dams. There is not enough lakes So the few lakes that we have and the few dams that we have are polluted. Yeah, they are polluted. That means they have become dangerous for human consumption. As I said earlier on, I'm speaking as what? As a drinker of water. I'm a human that consumes water. That means any water that is going to come from that tap into any household, you have to turn around and be brought up not by antibiotics, by herbs for you to survive that water. That's for everyone who's a drinker of water. That means now that thing turns around and becomes a national crisis. Who is meant to turn around and provide that the water that we drink is supposed to be safe? It is the government of Zimbabwe. Hold it there. It is the government of Zimbabwe. What is the government of Zimbabwe? Now I have to put in my political hat on. The government of Zimbabwe consists of the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative. 3 arms. The council is inside there. No one has ever said that the government structure has turned around now. It's been divided between the central government and the local government. It is the government. They are still paid by the same person. They're employed by the same person. They are put into power by the same ZEC. They get the same perks, rather at different levels. They are government employees. They are the ones that we turn around as citizens, drinkers of water. Because there is 2 things that we consume, all of us, at the same in that triple shade country. That is oxygen. We breathe the same. Water, we drink the same. Food, you can have a choice. Now, there is no one here that if it is not water, uncles, if it is milli, and someone says, your milli contains some milligrams of radioactive material, and we all laugh about it, and we still consume milli, no one will consume it. Your milli contains antibiotics of other people, no one will consume it. But when it comes to water, I am reading reports that contain radioactive material. And that is being pumped into people's houses. But again, as I said earlier on, we do not take it serious. Yet it's the thing that we consume the most outside of oxygen. Us, the drinkers of water, is the most safest thing, uncles, that when you're drinking it or when you are consuming it, you do not think twice. As you were talking, I went downstairs and got a glass of water for my tap. And my little one said she wants water. I had to give her. I did not think that the water turns around and it is poisonous. Why? Because I've got that trust into the government where I am, where anyone is, that the water that is going to come into that house is going to be safe. The other things, I check label. Yeah, well, the ones I go and buy in the shops for my choice, I check label. I do not have a choice of water. So I presume I start off on a positive, that everything is okay. So if Lake Tibero is like that, and we are agreeing that the things that are coming out from the water are terrible, We cannot play politics with it, and we cannot hide it, because all of us here are consuming the water. Our relatives are consuming the water. Why would we want to play around with life of our own relatives when we know we do not even have money to bury them? Radioactive material, heavy metals, carcinogens that cause cancer. You ask yourself, uncles and everyone here, how many liters of water does a human being consume average in a day? Then you start to understand how much we are putting in of the poison in our bodies. But again, in directing it to the government, because water is a national a resource, it has to be directed to people that can solve it. Can other people come up with ideas, to be honest, uncles here, to solve Harare at 2 million people? No, you are joking with yourself. You cannot. There is no short-term plan. There is no short-term plan to produce 2 million people to feed them water on a daily basis. You are joking. Can we build a dam next month? No. We do not even have the money. That requires anything that we can turn around and help the Hararan people becomes the government itself. It is the only one with enough money. Uncles, WASH has been trying to do this for the last 15 years. I'm looking at WASH report 2010. It projects that by 2020, through its own projects and the amount of money that is being pumping into Zimbabwe, it says through 2020, it would have turned around and cleaned almost all the water in Zimbabwe. In 2020 or in 2024, it has not even touched 10% of the water. Why? Because it decided that in 2011, it shifts from this project and starts to sustain water boreholes at short term. Now everyone is living short term. The boreholes that we're talking about were put in the early 90s, in the early 2000s, in the early 80s as short-term programs, so that we can concentrate on the big one to sustain the water. Yet, and I'll finish up with this. Honestly, people, where do you think you are going to get any one human beings to consume that dirty water and survive? Where do you think the business is going to come in? Because there is no business that does not require water. What about the human resource? The children. Let's not worry about us. Just say, sort us off. We're grown here. We've danced, dance on my piano. Put us on the other. The children, uncles, with low immune systems, that cannot tell what is clean water and what is dirty water. It's coming from the tap. But we will never turn around and put our own children that will live it in these houses that they were exiled in. We'll never put them through a liter of water that the kids at home are drinking. But we do not want to take it serious as the consumers of water. And that shows how deep disconnected we are with ourselves as Zimbabweans. You know, it would be much better if I'm Zeti and we're Zimbabweans and we have developed and we have evolved to a point that we don't need to consume water. Only thing I have to do is consume the water from the atmosphere. It will be much better. It will be understandable. But unfortunately, I have not developed and evolved at that stage. I still require water from the tap. My family members require water from the tap. Yes, the borehole here. But when the tap water comes in, they rush to the tap water because they're still used to that. And someone said it here, I think it was tough. He turns around and says, you take the water, you put it in a container. He was explaining the water. It says you can wait for it for an hour and then you see it settling down. Uncles, you know what that means. You wait for it for an hour, see it settling down, and then scoop with the other clear water on top, and then you drink it. The others that have turned around and gone to grade 7 will say, maybe first boil it. So you boil it. But are you taking out radioactive material and heavy material and heavy metals by boiling? No. You do not know. I do not know. 5 years later, 10 years later, you start to be ill. We don't have healthcare systems. We start to bury each other. And we're wondering why we're burying each other. No one is looking at what are we consuming here. One, I'll finish up with these angles. One, oxygen. We take in oxygen every single second. We take in oxygen. The next thing that we take in on a frequency that is a little bit lower than oxygen is water before we go to food. We take in more water than we consume food. And no one turns around and says, okay, oxygen, let's put it aside. This thing now that we consume, let's look at it might be the cause of why everyone here is ill. We don't address it to the government as the government in its truest form. Council and central government, you are all government. Who is messing up here? Because with me, I'm supposed to open my tap and it's supposed to be safe and clean water coming out from that tap. I do not care which party you belong to. You are all supposed to provide me, the water drinker, clean water. And everyone has to get the blame here. Because at the end of the day, we are continuously going to drink that water. Uncles, when someone is poor, there is someone today, tomorrow who's waking up, going to Lake Chimero and taking that water and drinking it. Because it's water. When someone is thirsty, a human being drinks peace when they are thirsty. Let's not pretend as if we've got other sources of water that we are turning around and being provided by God. We are dying out here and we are being killed by the thing that we turn around and get thirsty for. And people are playing politics out here. Thank you, Angus.
Very passionate. Thanks, brother Zeti. Thank you very much for that somber thought. I think it was Magneto coming next.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick. First and foremost, one thing I would want to point out is the water problem in Zimbabwe. Anyway, I would say this. I understand that the space hasn't been political for most speakers before me. You are talking but putting on a political jacket. And in that politicking, you are lying as well. Anyway, I grew up in Warren Park. Just below the Euros acre, there are Harare City Council water tanks, not on my tanks. When I was growing up in Warren Park, well before the formation of the opposition, I remember that was around 1997, 1998. We went for almost 3 weeks without water. So we would go and fetch water from those Harare City Council tanks. That was the only place you could get water from the tap, straight from the tanks, those Harare City Council tanks. But sometimes, because of a lot of people, some were even traveling from far as Kambuzuma Section 1, Rugai, Kambuzuma Section 2. People were traveling from as far as those places. coming to get water. And the mayor then, I think, was Solomon Talenta. So if we come and say opposition this, opposition that, to be honest, we are lying to ourselves and we are politicking. At the same time, I've heard someone was saying opposition councillors were sabotaging councils so that they'll bring down the country and to blame the government and stuff like that. That's another lie. That's a lie. I'll point out and I'll give you an example. The reason why Zinwa and Zinara was put in place, those two entities were put in place, especially Zinwa, it was put in place to take power from councils, especially financial power. If you look at the history of councils around Zimbabwe, the water problem became worse after the introduction of Zinwa. Before, when local councils were 100% in control of their water supply, the water situation wasn't as bad as it became when Zina was put in place. Same applies with the road. When Zinara came into effect, the road situation in Zimbabwe, especially in council-controlled areas, became worse. DDF and Ministry of Transport, they were disabled. But those were the two major entities which were repairing roads across the country. And whoever created Zinwa and Zinara did that purposely to take power away from council. Then the same, I think it's the same speaker who was saying councils were sabotaging and councillors, opposition councillors were sabotaging the council. No. In 2013, was it 2013, 2014, Ignatius Sombo just woke up one day and said, whoever owes whatever amount of money to any council, don't pay. And he ordered councils around the country to reset their accounts to zero. Who is sabotaging who? We move on from there. We went to 2016. I wish if you can bring former mayor Ben Manyenyeni. In 2016, Ben Manyenyeni as mayor of Harare in the Harare City Council, they gave a tender to a French company called Venolia. They charged, that company came, their representative for Africa came to Harare with his team. They did a physical study. They went to Morton Jeffrey Waterworks, they went to Lake Chiwero, and they started the water system in Harare. And I think in that contract, they wanted something like about 64 or 66 million. Then ZANU-PF vetoed that contract. They said, no, you can. And I remember it was the Zimbabwean ambassador to France then, because Venolia is a French company, who was called Fitiga. She was a woman. She wrote a letter saying, I think she gave about two reasons. One of the reasons says we cannot work with the French company since the EU has put sanctions on Zimbabwe. The other thing, she just gives some flimsy reasons, saying Venolia is not a reputable company. It's got a lot of problems around the world. And that tender was vetoed by ZANU-PF. And after it was vetoed, they gave a Chinese company that contract to do the water reticulation system in Zimbabwe, in Harare, I mean. Where are we? And where is that company? And that Chinese company was charging something like 108 million, twice the amount of money which Venolia was charging. A simple Google search will give you this information. Then we move on from there. About 2 years ago, before 2023 elections, before the reshuffle cabinet, July Moyo, as Minister of Local Government, he said, I've bought 5 water pumps at a cost of $10 million, of which 10 of those water pumps would cost less than $1 million. He said, where are they? Who is sabotaging who? Let's not come here and start politics. And someone, I think it's the same person who was talking about 40 engineers. That's bullshit. 40 engineers on my books. Otherwise, Harare City Council and the Bulawayo City Council working at full throttle, putting their engineers together. They don't employ more than 30 engineers. So someone coming here and saying, I've got this number of engineers. Guys, let's not come here and politicking and start lying to each other. That's politicking, and that's just lying to each other. You get 45 engineers is who? Some of the things, when we've got a problem, let's talk problem as it is, not just come here and telling each other this and that, which is a complete lie. The problem in Zimbabwe, the water problem in Zimbabwe, the Harare City Council, like any other institution in Zimbabwe, is suffering from political interference. If we didn't have that political interference and institutions are left in Zimbabwe to run independently, we wouldn't be where we are now. If you see the president going around Harare locations drilling boreholes, that's politicking. If the government and the president was serious in alleviating the water problem in Harare, you won't go and drill boreholes. Why not use that man or sit down with the Harare City Council and say, what's the problem? Let's solve that problem. But someone is going now, if you go to Glenora, there is some boreholes. Now they've been named after some government official. That's politicking, and it's destroying Zimbabwe. And this pollution system, I'll give you another situation, which is no one has ever mentioned about it. There is this Chinese Tao company when you're going to Norton, just after Chilero River. That company, for them to establish that, one, they established that company in a wetland. Two, those Chinese, they never even got that piece of land. They were given an offer letter by parents as Minister of Land to go and build their manufacturing company there. That company is disposing raw sewage into the river, into Chilero River. And effluent from their town manufacturing, they are pouring it. They don't have a sewer system there. It's direct into the river and it's going down into Darren Dam. Fish is dying. Fish are dying, I don't know, in Darren Dam because of effluent coming from that Chinese company. And environmentalists, if they try to do something, I know there's one talkative former MP for Norton. He tried to do what he can do. He was making noise, but he was given he was bribed and everything else. Then he went shush. He went quiet. And that problem is still going there. It's still going on. And it's another disaster which is happening there because of that Chinese style company. Whoever is thinking maybe, oh, this is not happening, just to go there, park your car, if wherever you go by combi, then walk around that company. Pipes are directly pouring raw effluent into the river. So it's a sad situation, and it's politics, and the politics is coming from Zambia. That's what the problem is. And Zambia is the one which is sabotaging everyone, not the other way around. So let's not come and lie to each other here. Anyway, thank you.
Right. Thank you, Magneto. Thank you for that. Just a quick one. Without going into detail, you brought in the 9.3 million water pump scandal. I think it was 2019. Yeah, July Moyo. I think with this businessman. Do you know what
Hello,
happened
Uncle
to that?
James.
Yeah, but also on this, since I was asking, do you know what was the outcome of that?
Hello, Uncle James.
Your guess is just as good as mine. I don't know. Because if there was any positive result, we wouldn't be talking about water problems in Harare. Because those 10 water pumps would be doing their job.
Yeah, I just remember the story. But anyway, thanks for that. Right, former Mayor Ebert Komba, I think you were coming next. I don't think he can hear me. Uncle Jed, are you there?
Yeah.
I don't think
Mayor.
Argundinzwa.
Mayor Gomba.
Thank you, Murise. Mushe, allow me to thank you for bringing up a very important issue for discussion. It is very important, and I think people, after discussing, will come up with more solutions. Chekutanga ndechekuti the Harare water situation is more complex because Chitungiza does not have a functional sewer system. Norton does not have a functional sewer system. Therefore, Harare itself, its sewer treatment plants are old. They cannot handle the large numbers of population. That's population increase that has taken place ever since they were built. The other thing is that last time I spoke about my illegal settlements, people who have settled in areas that were meant for future development, water treatment plant, sewer treatment plant, sorry. So it's another issue that we need to deal with. So, but your issue is Harare sewer problem, Lake Chiwero, water pollution. Who is to blame? It's a difficult thing to say, but we must blame the government. Then from 1980 to now. In 1990, these people were supposed to build Kunz. A tender was floated by government through the Ministry of Water. It was given to a person who was reported to be a nephew of Robert Mugabe. That person did not do his work. Up until probably around now, 2018, 19 there-ish, that's when the tender was reflighted. But I think the person is now dead. So Harare was now supposed to be getting water from Kunj and Musami, and who were then supposed to have been able to decommission Lake Chuel so that it can then be cleaned. Like what another engineer was saying, that there is a natural system of cleaning water. Pollution can through biology clean itself. Saka, the city council then could not now proceed to decommission Chiwelo because Kunzi and Musami have not been built, and these were supposed to have been constructed in 1990. Now I want to be able now to the sewer system, because you need to be able to attend to both. The president said Joint Ventures Act. If you are coming to us, for 1.5 million US. That's how we then were able to deal with certain suburbs like Glenview, Glenora, and certainly Fakosi and Kudiriro. Then, how do you deal with the current situation? During our tour with the government officials, then there were certain requests that we made. One was for government to increase its water supply to City of Harare through Zinwa, through the underground tunnel from Dawendel Dam. They were giving us 40 megaliters then. Then we asked them to increase. Government agreed to that. So what was happening then was that water from the lake, which was highly polluted, would be mixed with water from Dawendel in order to improve the pH quality and reduce the amount of chemical. But that was a stopgap measure of the fact that government was going to construct Kunzi and Musami. In terms of the Harare Master Plan, Kunji and Musami were supposed to have been constructed in 1990. And those two would give us about 800 megaliters of water per day. So that would be very helpful. And then we would do demand management. But I think there are now works being done on Kunji, but Musami is yet to start. Harare, why Harare's infrastructure is difficult to be able to rehabilitate and maintain? It's basically because Harare services, unlike other cities, Harare services other dormitory cities around it. So it gets to service them, but in most cases, they don't pay. So let's say Harare has got 2 million people who live in Harare. Those are the ones who pay, if they pay at all, for us then to be able to service Norton, Rua, Epworth sometimes, or Chitungis. Then, in most cases, the residents are asked to pay in RTGS or ZIG format. So that money, even if it accumulates, would then need to be able to, you then need to be able to look for US dollars using that for you to be able to service some of the recurrent expenses that the local authority gets to be able to meet every day. So the highest cost there in terms of water purification and distribution is electricity and chemicals. Those are the two highest contributing factors in terms of cost. Saka going